Obviously, the meeting will be recorded, so can people turn off their phones and things like that. That will be available for public listening. Again, it's the first one in 2019, and obviously being recorded. Can I ask for the Sederunt and apologies, please?
Good morning, everyone. We have 18 members present. We are quorate. And so far, I have received an apology from Councillor Drysdale. Councillor Dempster and Councillor Giusti are not present, but I've been advised that they may be along later in the meeting.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Brody?
Item 9 on Annan Harbour. I'm the chairman of Annan Harbour Action Group. I'll be taking myself away next door. Okay.
Thank you very much. Any others? Councillor Nicholl?
Thanks, Chair. Could maybe do with clarification. The Whithorn Trust is mentioned in here, and then the new town hall, and there's funding being allocated. We're 3 of us in this room. 4 of us in this room are directors of the Whithorn Trust. Is that a different body from the one that's applying for this money? Can somebody give us clarification on that, to start with?
Okay.
Chair, clarity would be good, but I have actually previously confirmed that the All Roads Lead to Whithorn is the governing group that is applying for the new town hall, which is completely separate to the Whithorn Trust, but clarification would be useful.
John?
That is correct. That is actually it is the All Roads leads to Whithorn, and so I apologise for the incorrect description in the paper.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is item number 3, minute of meeting of 23rd of November. I'm happy to move. Next item is minutes of Harbour subcommittee meeting of the 1st of November 2018.
I'm happy to move those, Chair.
I'm happy to second.
Okay, thank you. And then item number 5 is minute of enterprise and subcommittee meeting of 12th of December.
Happy to move, Chair. Happy to second.
Councillor James?
Yes, could I just come in and report to the parent committee of the enterprising subcommittee about my concerns about the way that enterprising subcommittee is being run?
If you have a complaint about how the committee is run.
No, it's just an observation that it's a committee which struggles to fulfil its purpose, which is running an enterprise, because the committee structure doesn't lend itself to that very well. But in terms of the minutes,
talk about the accuracy of the minutes.
Right.
This is the
okay.
So is there anything on the accuracy of the minutes?
I think some of the things that are said at that committee are not accurate. Whether or not they're minuted is another matter. But I did check one of the assertions made by an officer to colour a discussion, and it turned out to be not very accurate. So that probably doesn't affect the minutes, but I think it needs to be looked at how this committee is actually going. And that's no reflection of the chairman, who does an excellent job, but it's just not suitable for purpose. Anyway, that's my opinion.
I think what you'll find with minutes, of course, is that the discussion will obviously be recorded, but the outcome of the discussion will be recorded in the minutes. So you will have a public recording of that particular.
It is in the exempt part, but it just is the general way that is running is not suitable for its purpose, and the reporting of the minutes to here are not really useful to this committee.
I'd be wary if you're talking about exempt reports in this particular part, but can you talk to the clerk and see what the issue is after this meeting? Thank you very much. Okay, then, members, we go on to item number 6, which is the Infrastructure Capital Programme and Street Lighting Spend to Save Programme 2018-19. Finance and Progress Morton reported by Head of Infrastructure. This report provides members with a financial progress update for the projects and programmes contained within the 2018-19 capital programmes for infrastructure, including Street Lighting Spend to Save programme. The report also seeks members' approval for additional carriageway improvement schemes as well as providing an update on progress for some of the larger projects within the programme. In addition, the report provides information on the further work being undertaken following a pedestrian near-miss incident at Cargan Bridge Primary School, where officers are working with the community to implement a 20 mph speed limit scheme. The Head of Infrastructure and Transportation will take any questions on the report, unless you have anything to add, Director.
Nothing to add at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Stephen, you got anything to add? Members, Katie?
Thank you, Chair. Before we get into the actual discussion and scrutiny of the paper, I was just looking for some clarification, because on the recommendation 2.1, we're asked to note the financial progress under the capital class programme as reported in Appendix 1 and 2. However, on 3.42 on page 48, regarding the active travel programme, it says that it is existing in the Appendix 2, but it's not there. So I'm just wondering where that information is, because we're being asked to note it, but the information's not actually been provided within the report. So do we have any additional information regarding the active travel programme and where we are financially, what funding we've received, what we've spent, where we are with that?
Active travel?
Good morning, thank you. There is additional funding we get that we use the active travel programme, the capital side of the active travel programme, we use that to sort of co-fund a lot of other funding we get. So we get a number of elements from CWSS, which is the Cycling, Walking and Safer Streets, and SUSTRANS funding as well. Now, Tony, I think, have you got the number, for the total number?
I'm just looking for clarity, because it should be summarised in the Appendix 2 and it seems to be missing from Appendix 2. So can I ask, will we get that summary?
Sorry, the only elements that are in the active travel programme, page 1 of Appendix 2, which is not page 55, they are all the active travel schemes. So they are the schemes we take forward as part of the active travel programme. The funding is then associated with that. They are the capital funded elements, and then we claim back from the external bodies. So the schemes detailed on page number 55 are the active travel schemes.
Okay, happy with that. We have Sean.
Yeah, Chair. In the last year, we've seen an improved reporting of the programme, with the addition of the cost, etc. I noticed in the paper again that there's a number of additions to certain parts of the programme, and just for future, I think it would be helpful if they were identified either by an asterisk or a column that says it's a new one that's been added to the various programmes.
Stephen?
Yes, I agree completely with those comments. We've been, as you pointed out, Councillor, we've been developing the format of the reporting, and that was an omission that was spotted when late on, but unfortunately the report had gone for publication. And in future, we do need to highlight to you where the additional schemes are coming in. The additional schemes came in throughout the year as needs arise. And this particular quarter, we do plan in the programming or the works of the plan structural overlays. So that we need to be clearer in our reporting in Appendix 2, which of the schemes are additional for ease of reference. Thanks.
Okay, then Tommy, Roy's in again.
Thanks, Chair. 319 on the paper, Chair. I received a letter, and I'm sure a lot of other members did as well, from a group that have formed together between the yachtsmen, the fishermen on the Stranraer Harbour. Now, they held a meeting with Will Jones, who I believe is the regional harbour master. And I say a meeting, it seemed to be just a catalogue of complaints of work that hasn't been carried out under the health and safety. And this group has offered to meet with the officers of the council to discuss this. Is a meeting to be offered, and when will it take place?
Director?
Right, yes. Thank you, Chair. And yes, Councillor Sloan, I have a copy of that email. I have a copy of the minutes from the meeting, and they seem fairly comprehensive. It seems to have been a very constructive meeting, but there were concerns registered, and yes, I can confirm we will meet with the user group and take these issues forward. yes, I'll advise members when that is. Yeah.
Katie, you want to come on the same point?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say, although as the Chair of the Harbours Committee I wasn't invited to that meeting, I was too copied into that, and it's something that I've actually started to take up with the officers, and I'm going to be requesting a report on that for the next Harbours Subcommittee, which Councillor Sloan is on, but certainly as Chair of the Harbours Committee I'm looking to follow on that as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Rose?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at 3.21, and I just want to thank the officers very much for their reaction to the deteriorating condition at Dye Mill. It's greatly appreciated by the residents and community. But just leading on from that to 3.23, obviously it was a terrible incident that happened for the people of Dromore, and I would like to request that we have some timing on when this work might be completed, and I also suggest that we work really closely with the Community Council, who are very keen to just have some of their points clarified. So I'd really like to see some joint working there. Thanks.
Okay, how about that?
Thank you. We are scheduling the works at the moment, and we're at very much the preliminary investigation stages as to what works are required and a longer term solution. So it's something we're looking into for sort of next financial year, and very much the scheduling of the works will be of great importance within that.
Okay, Ian?
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at Appendix 2, Chair, and I'll not pick on anything in particular. I'll leave it as a kind of general question. But so there's a load of financial information in it there in regards to completed works. So one of the things we're looking at in the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee, so this is, we were talking about yesterday, so there's procurement processes to go through and so on and so forth. So we're looking at this, we look at how do we best procure, but also best value. So when I'm looking at it, scrutinising it, I'm thinking, okay, we've got a load of costs here, but what I'm trying to understand is how do we know we're getting best value in regards to these prices? I'm not saying the information's here, but maybe it might be forthcoming. And how do these compare? We've got procurement process again, so I think we have 3 quotes normally for each job as a minimum. So how do these prices that are in here, these finalised invoiced costs, is what it's saying, how do they compare to the original quotations that came in, I wonder? If it can't be answered here, happy to get that information afterwards, Chair, but quite keen in regards from a scrutiny point of view, just to understand how do we know we're getting best value for these costs, and secondly, how do they compare to the original 3 quotes that came in?
Aileen?
Thank you. There's obviously a level of commercial sensitivity that we need to look at when we're sort of disclosing any information like that. So as you said, the procurement process, we completely adhere to that and we follow everything there. And on the larger jobs, when it is the sort of the larger tender process, there are the different quotations in. They are marked on full best value, so it's not just a price factor. It's all the elements of the works, the whole project, what needs to be undertaken. So I think there is, obviously, as I say, the degree of commercial sensitivity that we can't really just disclose all prices, but it is something we'll happily discuss with you in sort of the processes that we undertake.
We'll come back.
Please, please, even if we could just get a spreadsheet on that sent through, marked confidential, I'd be quite happy. That way I could look through it. It's something we're looking at as a scrutiny committee, but also as a group we're quite interested in when it comes forward. So just to fully understand how we actually get to best value, how we comparable prices and so on and so forth. So maybe get a discussion after we've seen that information, discussed it kind of individually, even as a group, but I think good to see that information.
Aileen?
We'll discuss that with procurement and with our colleagues there as to sort of what we can release under the commercial sensitivity, and happily talk to you about it.
That's no problem, Chairman, but I think as members we can see anything whatsoever. There's no restriction to members of the Council.
Okay, thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it was a couple of points. One was just on the active travel. I don't know if all members got the communication, but it was written to by Sustrans just to do with their Community Links Awards, which amounted to about £730,000 for the year 2018-19. I was just wondering, is that all going to get spent this year for the projects highlighted, which I think are in the list? So that would be Dalbeattie Cycleway, Beat It to Moffat Cycleway, St Michael's Corridor, traffic signal refurbishment, cycle links to the hospital, etc. Does this need to be spent in year, or do we have to negotiate that with the external funder to say, well, these programmes are getting pushed forward or whatever? And the second point is just on page 46 and 47, it talks about the 20 mile an hour limit, or 20 mile an hour zones, depending, particularly around schools. And I'm just wondering how we're getting on with this, because I understand there's a bit of a perception that there seems to be a few desktop exercises and engagement exercises and then surveys and taking place, but I know from the residents in some of the areas it's becoming quite frustrating because nothing actually seems to be getting delivered. So I'm just wondering how we're getting on with the rolling out of 20 mile an hour, especially around schools. And if we've, obviously we have a priority list, but how quickly are we getting through that? And is there any sort of way we can, encourage this to move forward at a reasonable pace so that communities are assured? Thank you.
Donny, you answer that?
Right, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, to answer your first question, we get the funding from Sustrans is in two different streams. We've got the design stream funding and construction stream funding. So when we are applying for funding, we have to programme the work. So if we know that we're going to spend a year on preliminary design, consultations, detailed design, etc., the funding is just for that element. And then once it gets, we've detailed designed and been to procurement, we then apply for the construction match funding, which is 50%. The design funding's 100%. So some of the schemes identified for design, that is in this financial year. For instance, the scheme on New Abbey Road, Pleasance Avenue, that's for construction in the next financial year, and that will be application will be submitted in spring for next year. So yeah, all the money, we're now programming it a lot better because it used to be just one big pot of money, and now we can program it between design and construction. To answer your second point, since taking up my post, I must say that the 20 mile an hour, it does take some time, especially at the schools. We've just completed Gatehouse, and the orders are out for Gatehouse with construction due in the spring. I think there's a lot more community engagement and consultations required these days, and that's what's time consuming. We've had meetings with the school, parent council, elected members, community councils, before we can actually go to the order process, where we can sometimes receive objections, and that takes a bit of time sometimes to resolve the objections. So Gatehouse has just gone out as an order, and we have started work now on Cargan Bridge Primary School, which just so happened, it was just coincidental with the recent near-miss instance at the school last year that it was next on the priority list for the 20 mile an hour.
Welcome, Mark.
Yeah, just quickly, no, thank you, and appreciate that, especially with the separation between the design and the capital programme for the actual works for the Sustrans funding. Cargan Bridge, just on that one in particular then, is that sort of, when you say that's sort of ready or next on the list or prioritised, if you like, what's the sort of time frame for that order to go out, if you like, for the works?
Right, well, I've actually got a meeting with the local members at lunchtime today to go over that. I'm then meeting with the Traquair Langward Community Council later this month. I've already had a meeting with the head teacher at Cargan Bridge Primary School. I've been reviewing previous work that was done in 2014. What happened then was a proposal was put forward, and a lot of the parents were for it, and a lot of the local residents were against it. And it was just due to the amount of traffic calming, speed bumps, those sort of features. And so it wasn't really taken forward at the time because there was no clear way to design and build something. So I'm hoping now that I can review what's been done before. I can start a fresh programme of consultations and hopefully get something on the ground later this year.
Okay, I've got a few members want to come in. We want
just a sort of final nail in the coffin, if you like, but that's really welcome, and I think we've got a clearer mechanism now so that objections can be basically, if they can't be addressed sort of in a reasonable time, they'll go to area committee for a local decision. So at least there's a clear pathway now to actually get through that, isn't there?
That's great, yep. Right. Richard?
Thanks, Chair. It's following on from what Councillor Thompson's been on about. From page 45 to 47, we've got the speed limits and traffic calming programme. It's the Council's priority to introduce 20 mile an hour limits throughout the region wherever that's possible. And we've got a number of projects here, but it seems to be a sporadic approach rather than a planned one, where we maybe take a more developed approach, where we say, well, let's do some pilot schemes across the region, see how they work, and also take a more holistic view, because we were looking at schools in isolation, but schools are part of the community, and there's more than school children who need to be kept safe, like older people and pedestrians in our community. So maybe we should take a more holistic approach to that. I think there's more appetite. There's mentioned the Heath Hall blanket 20 mile an hour speed limit, and there seems to be more appetite for the blanket speed limits with no additional physical traffic calming, and that makes the scheme less expensive. So what I'm asking for is a more developed approach, a more planned approach to it, so we can say in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, this is where we'll be. And the final question is: there was a motion, a bill going through Parliament, Scottish Parliament. How is that progressing?
Okay, so Aileen.
Yes, with regards to your first point, you're aware there was a prioritisation listing done several years ago for schemes for 20 miles an hour. I think that the priority ones were urban locations with accident histories. Then it was moving on to conclude the schools programme, and then it moved on to sort of communities where they had requested 20 mile an hour schemes. So there is a prioritisation mechanism in place that was agreed by committee. And yes, I do sometimes feel I'm taking a bit of a sort of sporadic approach to the different schemes. I try to focus on the schools, but when the Heath Hall one came up, it was we held the public information event before Christmas. Everybody was in favour of it. And there's no additional traffic calming measures to be put in place. It's purely a signing exercise. The advert will be in the paper next week. So if that can go through with no objections, that'll be a really easy one to implement. We received a petition before Christmas as well for 20 mile an hour in the Glen Capel area. Now that's a community-led one, but again we have to prioritise that. Should we be working on that in front of the schools? Because the schools were higher priority than the community-led ones. And obviously we do our accident check every year to look for any areas with high accident incidences or accident hotspots. And again, we must prioritise them as well. So I do have quite a few ongoing, but I'm hoping that once I've got a few done and got a programme that I know I can work to and it works, I'll be able to start implementing a few more.
Okay, thank you. Sean, I've got a few first-time speakers, so I'll bring them in first, okay? So, David Ingalls.
Thank you, Chair. Page 43, item 315. I'd just like to thank the officers for the work done in the Penkiln footbridge and the road bridge. It's tidied that area up immensely. I wondered if there's an update on the ramps on the west side of the bridge. There was an issue with there's one side is no handrail, it's really steep. I think at the last meeting it was being looked at. The other thing that struck me, I'm led to believe that cars are now allowed to drive onto the pedestrian waterfront precinct at the cafe at Stranraer. Can that be confirmed for drop off to the cafe?
So who's dealing with that one?
Yes, Chair, I can certainly take the first one, and maybe our colleagues could assist with the second one. The Penkiln footbridge, we had carried out some checks on the approach gradients on both sides of the river, which I think we shared with you and explained they were non-compliant. to quite a degree, actually, on both sides. But there was also an issue, particularly on the west side, where there was a step at the bridge, so we've basically tackled that step and taken that out, made that flush and put a ramp back down. There is another piece of work which would be a follow-on project to look at the actual gradients both sides to achieve compliance, which would obviously require sort of capital spend. But that is something that we'd be looking at going forward, yes.
Thank you. Malcolm?
Thank you, Chair. It's just going back to and it's been mentioned already, is the 20s plenty thing at Glen Capel, which is incredibly strong community support. And I've got to say I'm pleased that you're doing the temporary traffic data survey. But again, as per Richard and Stephen earlier, I think this priority list for the schools, I think people could do with some kind of timetable for this or an indication of when it's going to happen. Because it's fine saying that, Glen Capel Killarney School, has got 24 pupils, I know that. But if you actually drive down and have a look at the place, it's a great big long straight downhill road which people approach at quite high speed. And maybe just taking the number of pupils in isolation as your order for prioritising is maybe a wee bit of a kind of simple measure. But the people would really like some reassurance as to some form of indication as to when this might happen. And again, it's as per Richard and Stephen earlier.
Okay, Tony, you come in, obviously with a bit caveats on that if there's objections to the road traffic orders and things like that, they may extend.
With regards to Glen Capel, we responded to the petition and the brochure that we received, and I have wrote to, I think it was Dr. Gilbert that submitted the letter in the paper, saying that I've done a letter response, and following on from that, I'd like to meet him on site so he can show me firsthand the issues, and we can see about getting some traffic counters down. But as I say, the school has only got a school rule of 24 pupils, and there's still 24 primary schools to be done in the region, and that puts the Carlaverat Primary School, it's 19th on the list. Now, if I start showing favouritism to schools that are 19th on the list, I'm just going to get criticism from the other schools that are due to be done, and it's taken resources away from, say, I'm starting work on Cargan Bridge. So it was a committee agreed approach based on school rule, but I will go and have a look and meet Dr. Gilbert and see what can be done.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know the community council people or community association at Carlaverat are pleased that you're coming down for this meeting, and I think it'll be very, very fruitful. But like I say, it still goes back to the point. I fully understand that you've got to have a list of priorities, and you can't show favouritism. I've not got an issue with that at all. It's just I think people would maybe like a wee bit of clarity as to a likely date, that's all.
Okay, we'll take that on board. Jeff?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, no, it shouldn't be parochial, but somebody else raised it earlier. The Heath Hall 20 mile an hour limit. I'm really pleased that progress has been made on this at last. I think I've been working with the Community Council for the best part of a decade in terms of this, and all they want is signage. They don't want speed bumps. It's quite a simple project, and I think it's a way in which most of the local housing estates will be going in the future. So can we have some idea of when the signage will actually be in place? It does seem to be taking an awful lot of time. I was in Lochside fairly recently, going to the northwest, to Max High, and they've got a 20 mile an hour sign system in place with signage, with smiley speed recognition cameras, etc. I don't know how that came across so much more quickly than Heath Hall. So that's my first point. If I could have a response to that.
Members, can I ask a bit of clarity here? Obviously, there are issues here that are strategic and operational. Some of these questions are operational. They could have been asked prior to this particular meeting or even after the meeting. So let's make sure that we get those questions that are operational asked by the officers prior to the meeting or after the meeting, okay?
Right, my non-specific question is in terms of Appendix 2 and the various projects. For the programmed ones, is it possible to put an actual date for when these are programmed to be carried out?
Thank you. The Appendix 2 actually is something we're looking at in entirety. This financial year has been a trial of doing it in this methodology. We're now using an automated system that everyone sort of logs in and logs their the progress of their works. To put more detail into it, would require a bit more work, and it is the problem with, not meaning that it's work to do, it's the scheduling of the works with the raising of the orders, the noticing. These elements do hinder progress with the reporting side of it. So it's looking at this reporting and how to best portray the progress date. So that is, it's very much, we understand it's very much a blanket underway in progress that we do need a little more clarity on. Now, they are noticed, any road specific projects are noticed through the roadworks register. They are logged formally through there, and that gives the specific indication of it. These works, the blanket works, are something else that we need to look at. Now, we try and sort of have as much detail as possible, but with the timings and when we're reporting to you as well, it does cause a bit of difficulty. But it is something we're very much looking at going into next financial year, how best to report it, how best to sort of report to everyone and come back on these issues. And that's something we're very much taking on board.
Okay, Tony.
Yeah, just to answer your question, the works at Lochside, that was part of the Northwest Campus for the school, for the 20 mile an hour, and that was funded by Sustrans. So the reason it was fast-tracked was it had to all be in place for the Northwest Campus opening last year. Your second point was for Heath Hall. It's the order process. We're advertising next week. It's three-week advertising for the draft orders, followed by 6 weeks advertising for the made order. And that's assuming we don't get any objections. So the earliest we can implement the 20s at Heath Hall would be probably 3 months' time. So maybe April, May would be the earliest we could get them in. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Graham, and then Sean, I'll bring you in.
Thanks, Chair. Just to reiterate what Councillor Ingalls said, I congratulate them on the job they did on the suspension bridge in Newton Stewart. It's not often we get a chance to congratulate the council, but anyway, we will this time.
It's always welcome, sir.
It's always welcome, I'm quite sure. Just on that, David actually asked two parts to his question. He hasn't got an answer to the second part yet. I hope that hasn't been forgotten, but that's not. 20 mile an hour speed limits and 20 mile per hour zones. Could somebody explain to me the difference and the implications, cost implications, structural implications of implementing these, please?
Tony, you want to come on that one?
Yeah, a 20 mile an hour zone requires traffic calming measures, and if the mean speeds are recorded to be greater than 24 miles an hour, that's where you need measures to slow them down, and that's what's classed as a zone. If you do your speed counters and your speeds are no greater than 24, you can implement the 20 limit with no traffic calming measures.
And that's just a 20 limit?
Yes. That's called a 20 mile an hour limit, and a zone is with the measures. Yeah.
Thank you. Sean, Andrew, then Jim.
Just a couple of points on the one that we're just discussing with regards to 20 mile per hour zones in schools, etc. I think what might be worthwhile is that obviously the council will have it on their system, but for 19 years as a councillor, I can remember we've been at this, all the time I've been a councillor. We had safer routes to schools, we had safer streets, so there has been a lot of work done, and to be fair, I've found, for example, Easting's Primary School has been done twice. So they've actually looked at that, worked with the community. So I don't think it's sporadic. I think this is an ongoing programme over 20 years, and what it might be worth actually circulating to members, if it's easy to hand, is all the work that has been done round about the schools, because there is a considerable amount of work over the last 20 years, and you'll see how much, some just want advisory, 20 mile per hour routes, etc. But there has been a lot of work done. So I know some council came in and they'll seen, maybe they feel as though that some are being selected over others, and there is priorities. That's always been the case over the last 20 years. The second point is, I think Councillor Surtees raised it, but obviously the tragic event in November, this report obviously attracted national broadcast media attention yesterday. And the question I had was just on the second bullet point. It's really, it says about the review of the current system for implementing a temporary road closure. I just want a little bit more information on that and the things that you're looking at. Is it you're looking like more for more physical measures for the road closure? I just want to understand it a little bit more.
Okay, so first of all, can we have a list of those things that we've actually done in the past with regards to 20 mile an hour, and the second one was about the tragic event and how we're going to review that measure?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there have been meetings already within the council, within the various relevant bodies within the council, also including SEPA, to try and get a full picture of what we need to do going forward, how we can improve things where there's improvement required. It's also assessing what we do at the moment in terms of our measures to close roads. And you're quite right, we are considering more physical measures to be put in place, things like comparisons to snow gates in other parts of the region, the country. So yeah, it's really looking at a whole range of measures. And we're also going out tomorrow actually to drive through the route, the 716, and also the diversion route to assess it with further plans to have full surveys done of those routes to best understand where the critical sections are on the A716 itself for impact from the sea, and also the condition of the diversion route.
And the programme has already happened, Stephen?
I think just to build on that response, there's been communications with SEPA. They have a flood warning system in the coastal areas, and there is a flood warning system that's associated with this part of the A716, and they're quite keen to understand from our data and the data that they have how they can better inform us in terms of incidents when there can be overtopping to the public road. So they're quite keen to work with us on looking at the warning system, just to tailor that a bit better to us. They're obviously kind of focused on properties, but they're quite keen to be able to tell us about the flooding and the inundation on the road itself, and the warnings that would trigger for us to respond to in terms of implementing a closure of the road.
And the programme that's happened on the 20 mile an hour scheme, the programme that's happened, could that be circulated? Very much. Andrew Wood.
Thank you, Chair. It's under the active travel programme. There's no mention of the 2 e-bikes that we're getting from NHS. Have they actually transferred to us yet? And will they be limited just to our staff or to elected members? And when will we get an update on the outcome from the trial?
Okay, Stephen.
So this is something that I'll check with our Swestrans colleagues and get back to you on that, Councillor. It's not something that we're aware of as a project at the present time. So I'll check with Douglas Kirkpatrick on that.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Chair. Several members have commented that they would like to see dates for work to commence. I think the same thing applies to dates for work to be completed. With regard to Harbours, it's a bit indeterminate to use a phrase, substantial completion will be achieved. I think it is rather better simply to name a date for completion. If the date is not achieved, then a report can go to members to that effect. But substantial completion is a rather vague statement, certainly in my eyes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd have to agree from your perspective that would seem a vague term. It's actually a contractual term. It means the site is officially substantially complete, so we can actually make use of the harbour. So it's a contractual term we're using there. And except, yes, we could put a date in, and I think we've done that with Glentarris this time round as well. So we've put a specific finish date that we're expecting to achieve, and yeah, going forward we can certainly look to put that in more often.
Okay, thank you very much. Remember, we've aired that quite a bit there. We'll now go on to the recommendations. Members are asked to note 2.1, agree 2.2, agree 2.3, and agree 2.4. You happy with that? Thank you.
David, Chair, we didn't get an answer to David Engels' point.
Oh. Can you clarify, David, the second question?
Yeah, it was I believe there's an agreement now that cars can travel on the pedestrian promenade at Stranraer waterfront to drop off at the Driftwood Cafe.
Sorry, Michael Rosie, Project Officer for Economic Development. I inherited this in November, so I've been working in conjunction with the Driftwood Cafe and also the Stranraer Rowing Club down there. At the moment, there is no solid agreement in it. What I have is a proposal that's actually going out for internal consultation. So I've basically put it internally within EEI. It's been to planning. I've had a response back to them to say that my proposal wouldn't be subject to planning. And I've put it back out to Roads Department for a quick comment to see if it would actually fall within the remit of these guys. And it's just sitting with our corporate health and safety as well for their final comment on the matter. But the solution that I've proposed, I think, is fairly workable. It's a pragmatic solution. It would involve allowing access to or given the ability to operate the drop-down bollards that have been installed into Agnew Park, giving freedom of control over those to the people of the Driftwood Cafe to manage that throughout the day, basically dropping them at the start of a shift, raising them at the end of their shift, and then giving ad hoc access to the users of the rowing club to allow them to use it and drop the bollards as and when they require. And then what I've proposed is allowing vehicular access and putting disabled disabled bays right next to Agnew Park Pavilion, and using sleeping policemen to essentially control the speed that a car could physically travel past the rowing club, which are the two only areas of kind of blind spots that I see. So this is the proposal that I put out, and I'm just waiting on final comments. Once those final comments come back, I think I could act relatively quickly. But as I said, I'm still waiting on those to come back, those comments. So I hope to have them by the end of the week.
Okay. Yeah, so am I right in saying then that vehicles will be allowed to drive along the pedestrian promenade?
Sorry, it wouldn't be for vehicles to drive along the pedestrian promenade. What it would be, my proposal would be to allow specific vehicles, as in people with disabilities or access for deliveries, which is currently the agreement that's in place, but to extend that to people with disability, to allow them vehicular access past the side of the rowing club and up into the Agnew Park. Pretty much what they were doing originally, essentially, but in a controlled manner, in a manner that actually protects the public to the best of.
Chair, can I just ask, have you had a look at any other access points that access can be gained from, rather than going down onto the pedestrian promenade?
As currently, I'm not aware of any other access points without having to form a new access point into Agnew Park, to the pavilion.
Okay, I mean, we went through the recommendations on this, David, so can I ask you to maybe talk to Michael outside of the committee? Now go on to item number 7, members, which is Director's 6-month assessment of business plan performance, economy, environment, infrastructure. The report's by the Head of Plan Regulator Service, the Director's here. This report provides elected members with the Director's assessment of the 2018-19 6-month progress on delivery of the 2018-23 business plan for economy, environment, infrastructure directorate for the period of April to September 2018. The report highlights some areas for improvement. There has been good progress in delivering a challenging number of projects and PIs, as well as a lot of time spent moving forward some of the big strategic issues for EEI, such as the negotiated ending of the waste PFI contract, the operational plan and the preparations for the transfer of this activity to the Council, flood protection projects including the White Sand Scheme public inquiry, development of the Newton Stewart and Langham proposals as detailed in agenda item number 8, the LDP2 proposed plan progress through full council and on to examination stage, engagement with the South of Scotland Enterprise Partnership, the Emerging South of Scotland Agency and the Borderlands proposals, all of these requiring the prioritisation of a significant amount of officer time during this period. I would like to highlight that on page 195 the graph is actually missing, but it's just the graph that's actually missing. The information on the exemption report is actually there. The Director and the Heads of Service will take any questions on the report unless you've got anything to add. Director?
Nothing to add at this stage, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, members? Ian?
Well, just to get things started. I think I've got maybe a few things I'll pick up, maybe expand as it goes on, but I notice on page 194, just as a starter, it's the exception report, the average number of lost days per all other non-teacher, which is obviously people within this. I suppose 45% are around about over target. That's easy to say, but I don't think it's just as bad as what maybe that sounds, 45% over target. But so that 6.37 is the actual days lost due to sickness and 4.5 days being our target. What impact will the improvement action in regards to you have on the trajectory? Because I've noticed for a number of years now it's quite steady and it's quite a good explanation in regards to what it is. I think you've got to get to a point where you either accept a level of sickness or you adjust it, or the improvement action has to be changed in order to bring it into line so it does come down to the 4.5 days. That's when I'm kind of coming through that one, Chairman. On page 202, I suppose I just touched very briefly on that one. It's more about improvement action that's here as well. It's more for Steve, this one, I think. But it's as a verifier, I think we've struggled. I think Scottish Government, maybe I'll be looking at it as it stands when it comes to that. Maybe some comments, but I just think I struggle with that when it's performing at a lower level. It is the improvement action, again, fit for purpose. Maybe a conversation around about that, Chairman, and just to touch on it. And I think the very last on page 208, I just wondered, that's a very bland one. I think we're a real opportunity here when it comes to, I might say broad, not bland, broad one. And as we go forward with this new waste strategy, more community councils and community conversations to speak to people, it seems to be very much in the conscious of our communities that they really want to see the implementation of this new waste strategy and the recycling rollout across the region. Far more as whatever I've ever heard it in the past. There seems to be a real desire for that. So I just wondered at what level, as we go through this process here, taking it and delivering the zero waste investment programme and the new waste strategy and the new rollout, because we've got that opportunity here in front of us, at what level, just an indication to what level we're communicating and taking our communities and consulting with them. Are we, in particular community councils, are we at least consulting with them in regards to the rollout, publicity-wise, communication, so on and so forth, Chairman? 3 points, I think, maybe just to get things started.
Okay, so there's 3 points there. Steve?
So if I can come in on the last point, in terms of the exception report here and the improvement action, moving beyond, we've gone through last year very much tied up with the determination and the transition, and we're in a kind of an integration phase. We're conscious that we need to pick up on the opportunities now that present itself to the Council with the control from start to end in the whole process. And we're putting a discrete team together that will be dedicated to rolling out the waste strategy between now and the summer. And as part of that, we will be looking at, when we come back to committee, we're kind of briefing committee on in terms of how that strategy develops, what that means in terms of the spin-offs, in terms of the operational impacts on the waste collection service, options and recommendations on that, options and recommendations on what we do with the Equideco MBT now that we have full control of that, trying to minimise costs, trying to meet the targets within legislation in terms of avoiding waste to landfill and the benefits that comes with reduced landfill tax payments. Part of that process, and we're setting that team up, actually we're kicking off that team this week, but part of the task that's been given to them is to look at the communications plan that's required with that programme, how much communication we will need with elected members and community councils. I think in the past that was quite an intense process when we looked at the rollout in the Wigton area. I think that's maybe a whole level once we're actually rolling out collection services. We need some quite intense communication resource applied to that. But in the interim, I would imagine the development of the strategy would be very much something that we come to members on with options and recommendations. And when we move into the implementation phase of a new collection service or any significant change that affects public-facing services, we would be looking at good communications with the community councils. And it's vital in terms of that, in terms of the uptake of the services, and particularly in relation to the recycling and the food waste that we do manage and programme in a resource for communications.
Just on that particular point, Steve, obviously there's the change in the legislation that comes in next year for landfill, or not sending anything to landfill. How are we with that included in that conversation?
Yes. Effectively, the ban on biodegradable materials to landfill is something that we're considering in how we implement that and working towards the options to work around that. There is still allowed material, inert waste can still go to landfill as an option.
Thank you. So the other 2 points then?
On sickness absence, these are national figures that every directorate has to try and achieve, so I think we still need to try and strive to achieve that. Overall, yes, there is a downward trend, but as I highlighted in the report, a lot of our services are doing the lifting, the carrying, the lugging. We're the manual side of the council, really, and with an ageing workforce, we need to look at how we manage what staff are doing, starting from health and safety, our practices, safe operating procedures all the way around, so we're not wearing our staff out. But as we get older, that's going to be a case. We're working very closely with colleagues in OD and HR to make sure we are managing how we do that. So that's the manager training, or the supervisor training, or the team leader training, to understand how they should be implementing the policy and the practice. And our new occupational health provider seems to be very active, and they're giving very good support to our managers, particularly in tricky situations where somebody may have been off for an operation that was genuinely required. Doctor normally says 6 weeks, we're recovery time, but now we're putting in the practice, as soon as we can refer a member of staff to OC Health, we'll refer them to make sure that that is either required or there is a shorter time period to come back from sickness absence as well, because too often it can just be, I'm going for operation, I'm going to be off 6 weeks and that's it, we're not challenging. We're now starting to challenge all those scenarios and utilising the processes where, if it has to go down a capability route, well, that's the route we have to take it, the policies there. But I think it will be, it's not going to fall off a cliff because of that, the way that we're kind of, our staffing is, but it is certainly reducing, hopefully, and we just need to, as I say, keep on trying to hit those targets.
Okay, and Steve?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the response to this issue is around the development of our action plan. I think that you raised 2 points, one about whether the action plan is fit for purpose or appropriate, and secondly, I think you mentioned some issues or concerns about the verification contract that we have with the Scottish Government's BSD. So I'll deal with both of those. The action plan that we've developed is very much focused on how we can improve some of our internal processes and ensure that staff have got the correct guidance in terms of prioritisation and some work in practice changes that we need to put in place. This indicator is very much about the front end part of the building warrant assessment process. So what this is telling us is that there is a problem at the front end in terms of the amount of the capacity and the amount of staff resource that is currently going into that initial assessment. We have other indicators which are currently satisfactory. So, for example, the issuing of completion certificates, we're still turning those around when we're requested to issue a completion certificate within 10 days. We're turning 97% of those around within 10 days, so that's working. We're also, when we've been through that initial first phase, once we receive any information that's requested from the agents, if that is satisfactory, we then have a target to then issue the building warrant. And at the moment, we're achieving 82% compliance against that target, which is to issue the building warrants within 10 days of receipt of the additional information. So this indicator is telling us there's a problem right at the front end, and we've developed a short-term action plan to try to address that. And we've also discussed that with input from the Building Standards Division. The head of Building Standards Division at Scottish Government came down, we had a meeting with them. As you probably know, we're measured by the Building Standards Division across 10 different indicators. The only ones that we include in the business plan are probably the two key ones, but there's a broad spread of 10 indicators that we're measured against, and this is the only one of those 10 that's red. So we've got a couple of ambers, but the rest of them are green. So it tells us that there's quite a specific issue at the moment that we're going to have to deal with.
Do we come back?
I wouldn't mind, just a couple of points. So that's fine. Some of it's an admin problem, is what I'm hearing, if it's at the front end. And if that's a simple solution, I would like to see that. So we'd expect to see a difference again at the next one, if that's the case, even if it's after the budget process, we'd expect to see something, because obviously it is a problem. I think it's quite a serious problem.
Because I've got a suggestion for a recommendation on how members can be informed of how that's moving forward.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you very much, Chair. And I suppose just a second quick point is in regards to, if it's a national indicator, it's Stuart saying, is regards, I think, how do we then compare at a national level? Again, if it's 4.5 days, if that's a national, how do we compare against the rest of the local authorities? I don't see that information here. I think it's important. If it's no for now, it's for maybe another meeting, right? Okay. Because if the rest of them are 6, 7, 8 days, then fine, you can see it. I just think the point I was probably trying to make more than anything with that one was that if we're setting that red, it's consistently red. There's an obvious, maybe even justifiable reason for that because of the age demographics and the type of work. Then we should address that. But if it's a national figure, then we need to understand what the wider country is looking like.
We'll make sure that information.
Yes, Chair, if I may just to come back in on that. Probably the two indicators that are more admin heavy are the issuing of the completion certificates and the issuing of the warrants once we've received the information in. So what this is telling me, what this is telling us, is that there is an issue not with the admin processes, but with the professional staff capacity within that team. Now that's one of the things that I've asked the external review of the Building Standards Service to have a good hard look at, because likewise I would be concerned if there was going to be any issues around, first of all, meeting our statutory requirements, but secondly, retaining and improving the verification contract that we have with BSD, which is up for renewal around about this time next year.
But there's also the information on Professor Cole's report that's got to be included with the building standard side of things that we're taking on board. Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions, so I'll just go through them. Page 167, and it follows on the back of the answer earlier about lost days, etc., and the ageing workforce and manual labour. But I'm just conscious that there's an exception there for the number of young people through the Youth Guarantee who could be given opportunities to become part of our workforce, and I'm just wondering, well, there's sort of young opportunities that might be able to pick up some of that manual labour if they're given the appropriate opportunities and if there's an appropriate pathway for them. However, I'm seeing that there's a to be confirmed under the measurement section, and that's the indicator from April 1st, 2018. So I know there's an exception report, but I'm just wondering, do we have any details at all there, or is the structure still being set up? Second question is on page 176. It alludes to the public social partnership for community transport. So we've got a future date for completion of that, but I'm aware that the funding for that was sort of time limited, and I think I understand Swestrans is the appropriate body that's sort of delivering that, but I think for the benefit of community transport operators in the region, that might be something we need to either get some kind of report back so we can fully understand how, one, that the initial PSP work has progressed, what it's told us, and then how we can take it forward in light of our partnerships with other agencies, such as the Health and Social Care Partnership, for example. Page 179, the Road Safety Capital Programme, has got 2 months to go and we're at 50%. It's not an exception report, but is there a comment we can get on that in terms of getting that completed to 100% within the timescale? And also page 184, it does come up later in the week actually at Policy and Resources, where we have an issue with FOI response times. Now, I'm wondering if this is a corporate sort of cross-cutting thing rather than a directorate level thing. I don't know if we're talking about our responses internally from EEI to the corporate service, who then respond to the FOI as it comes in, or if it's, how that's structured, because it looks like there could be a good way of setting ourselves more properly to deal with that. And also the redaction tool, which is mentioned there, I think it's also mentioned in the P&R report, which comes up later in the week, obviously. Would that mean EEI would have a share of that cost, or would it be a corporate cost? So it's just a couple of details on those. Thanks.
Okay. So we've got Stephen, you're going to go first?
Okay. So the Road Safety Capital Programme, so that 50% will have been the position at the end of September in terms of the reporting for the first 6 months. So at that point, in terms of the assessment that was made, that we reckoned we were reasonably through the programme, that we were achieving the programme. The detail of that is really covered in the capital report in terms of all the schemes that we see within the programme in any 1 year. And I think the discussions we had about adding in, dates to some of these schemes, we will look at that and take that forward for individual schemes. On page 176, on the invest an additional 100,000 to deliver social and community transport across the region. Sorry, was that the query was on 176? Yeah. So we're looking at, we're looking at the capacities and organisations to provide community transport, and I know some work has been pulled together and just reporting back, and that's been, in terms of a presentation is being developed to be able to report back to the interested parties, and that's been reviewed with the third sector parties that we're working with. But I'll flag that up to come back to committee for a report on the conclusion of that. And I know what you say about the due date, the 2023, in terms of the programme. That should be much sooner in terms of the funding was allocated for a specific period of time, and we're nearing the end of that funding period. So we will take an action to report back to EEI committee on the progress on that.
On that one, Chair, I think because there is sometimes a confusion about, is this something that Swestrans will see because they've commissioned the work, or do we then see that as EEI committee in terms of our investment to Swestrans to do that? So I think there's a wee bit of something that members might benefit from understanding that better.
It's we're reporting in our business plan as the council, and it's the council that has funded that work. As you point out, though, it is linked very much with work that Swestrans do, and to a certain extent we rely on some of their resources and expertise to deliver the work and the study so far.
Yep.
Cover the FOIs. That indicator that's sitting there is basically an end-to-end process. So anybody that submits an FOI comes into the corporate centre, the information management and complaints unit. They have to do a bit of process to that to make sure it's a justifiable person, do some checks. Then it's then triaged to the directorates. We have to gather information and then send it back in, and that all has to be complete within 20 days. This is the first time this has been actually disaggregated to directorates. Before we did it as a whole, a corporate indicator, but now we're getting our own performance in this. And I think the business managers group, along with the IMCU, have been meeting to understand how we can all improve our performance on this, because I think there is, as we've changed staffing, workforce, where we maybe previously had quite a good knowledge on FOIs and how to do it, we've changed a lot of managers, and we're needing to refresh that really and actually clarify as to who's going to undertake certain parts of the project, because we're getting more and more FOIs in as a council as a whole, so the workload becomes greater. So it's actually just defining, are we doing the best process? How automated can we get this? So the idea of the redaction tool is we get more and more electronic records. We're not sitting with lines of paper and big black pens and having to go through them all in and photocopy them all again and send them back out. So it's really looking at how we can improve the process to start that turnaround to do that. So we've got both sides of the coin. we've got the directorate and the corporate centre who kind of have the overview, all working together to try and make sure we can improve these targets. But it is a wee bit of a hill to climb just with the volume. I mean, I think I said there, we're getting 33 a month, and it can be from quite easy to quite complex. So there's no easy answer to say, yeah, we can, turn this around in X time, because you'll not know what you're going to earn, and some can take a lot of working time.
Yeah. Chair, thank you. So does that mean that it might reach a point where we don't answer the same question twice through an FOI, because we'll actually publish for public information, and there'll be like a council Wikipedia almost, where you just put in, it'll be easy to find either for the public or for staff members trying to answer an FOI?
That's the intention, yeah. If we start publishing what we've already sent out, yeah, somebody can come in, because quite often they are along the same lines of inquiry. So yeah, we will. I think the move is to, the more we can publish online, hopefully the less FOIs eventually we should have coming in, because the information or something very close to what somebody wants is actually there online and accessible.
Okay, can I just ask a question now? Because one of the things that I've been asked by reporters in the media is, maybe get asked a question, I say, well, I don't know the answer, I'll just put an FOI request in. Rather as doing some investigative journalist work, they will put an FOI request in. Has that seen an increase or what?
Yes.
Final point.
Yeah, so that related to the young people, the youth guarantee, because I think there's an exception report for that as well, in terms of, and it was really just, is there any sort of a use in sort of linking that in some way to sort of refreshing or helping, providing a pathway to refresh our ageing workforce, especially where it's manual handling or sort of manual work and the difficulties that has as you get older?
Jan, you're coming in.
Yeah, that's one of the intentions of the way that we've restructured and our new approach to employability and skills. So what I'll do is, I'm aware of the approach, but I'm sure you want a little bit more detail, Councillor Thompson, so I'm quite happy to get the manager to send you just an outline of what's happening there. But I do know that it is joint working, and it's joint working with DYW, and I'm also aware that there is also internal joint working as well. So if that was to be utilised, that would be smart.
David?
Thank you, Chair. I'm on page 194, and I'm just looking for a little bit more background to these stats. Whether it's skewed by, I don't know the size of the workforce we're talking about here, but I'm wondering how much this is skewed by individuals who are on very long absence times, and it makes the whole workforce look bad. But I could foresee a situation where the rest of the workforce would be attending very well, and certain people would be off for a long, long time. And I read here it's musculoskeletal absences mainly, so less stress then. I'd like clarification on that. And it didn't sound like from your answer that this is really going to get better. So I'm just wondering whether this would be better with an ageing workforce to use this as a progressive chance to downsize our operation, and if we're taking on a lot of younger people who would be in a manual trade, which is less fashionable nowadays anyway, for a long period of time, with the technological change that is coming, we may no longer have jobs for them really that we have at the moment. I mean, many things are done very manually at the moment, but within 10 years, is that really going to be the case? I wouldn't like to bet my future on that. If I may ask about 202, and then that'll be me done. Actually, it won't. I'll have something else later. But here on 202, we were told this was going to improve. I suppose a statistical opinion as to whether it's improved or not, but it seems to not have improved. Would a change in our voluntary redundancy policy have an effect here and stop us losing key individuals in a department that's not very large? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll have a go. The size of the workforce is not something necessarily a sickness absence can determine. That's obviously for members to decide over the while, how we budget and we go forward. But looking at skewing. Yes, there are some individuals, if they have gone off for maybe it's for an operation or something, it can take a while to bring them back. But we get support from colleagues in HR, we get support from OC Health. We've got council policy that we need to follow before we can get to an end point and make a decision. That could be ill health retiral, it could be capability, it could be dismissal. So we need to work through the processes, but unfortunately, in managing absence, there's nothing quick. And when I was saying about the improvement, there is a general downward trend, but we're talking 1,200 odd staff. The vast majority of them are manual staff. So it will be a process whereby that staff dynamic will change as they get older and replaced. But what do we need to bring in the bottom, and how much do we need of that, is a longer process. I mean, you're talking years rather than, as I said, falling off a cliff. But I think the general direction is down, and we are doing everything. It's a bit like, we have put our staff this year through the flu jab to try and take out, invest there, to try and take out one day saves the cost of the flu jab. But the flu jab has a certain amount of strains in it. If you get a strain that's not in it, we've got a sickness absence. So it's all a bit of a lottery, and we're trying to do as much as we can to bring that down. But actually, as to the numbers of manual staff and how the general workforce and whether we're going to have robots fixing a road, I think that might come in time rather than what we can actually do really just now.
Steve O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose the question really is this a capacity issue that's causing this problem, or is it because of some other reasons? And my take on that is it's probably a combination of the two. There's a combination of the reduction in capacity combined with some changes in working practices that are needed to be put in place. So I think before we can jump to the conclusion that it's simply about having more bodies within the service, we also do have to have a very good hard look at, are we actually working as efficiently as we could be? Are we making best use of technology? And are we able to continue to provide a level of service which is acceptable to our customers? At the end of the day, there always has to be a balance between the demands and the requirements of our budget situation and the need to find savings. Let's be realistic about that, and the need to maintain a satisfactory level of service. And we need to take a step back and have a good look at building standards and say, are we getting that balance correct at the moment?
So implicit in that answer, you are up to complement at the moment then?
We are up to complement, up to the reduced complement that we have in building standards, although we do have an issue with a long-term illness which has affected capacity since the start of the year.
John Young.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I note on page 197 that over half the EMEs that were dealt with were for a single service, over 30 per month. Does that not really indicate the concern members have on that particular service? And should they not be receiving more regular updates to keep them aware of what is happening within that particular service, which is what service?
Okay. Well, it's difficult to comment on obviously what members have by way of concerns, but yeah, the service in question is our road service that receive the vast bulk of EMESs that come into EEI. But just to put it in some kind of context for members, in the first 6 months of this plan, the council as a whole received 563 EMESs from members. 312 of those, 55%, come into EEI. We've also got the CCES system, 184 in total. EEI got 114, which is 62% of all the CCESs. MSP ESs, council as a whole got 195. EEI got 124, 64%. So if we round all those up together, there was 942 overall inquiries come into the council, and EEI took 550 of those, which is 58%. So there is quite a significant input into the service, and it is tending to fall in the one place. Now, it'd be for others, unfortunately, to comment on the feedback on that, but that's a simple fact. We're receiving something like just over two a day into the service.
Directly, you want to go in?
Yeah, and I think that puts it in perspective. We are dealing with a large volume, and I've mentioned that before. If members understand it, this is the first 6 months we're reporting on. Very recently, and certainly before the Christmas break, we put arrangements in place to have a real good look at how we can turn these round quicker, and we made quite a bit of progress. So I hope this is going to improve. Obviously, roads issues are very dear and close to members' concerns, as they are the public, and we just have to make sure that we can answer these as quickly and give an answer that's acceptable, rather than create a ping-pong match. It's hopeless sending back an answer that members are not satisfied with, because it just extends the work in the period. So we are working very hard at that. But the staff have to be able to get on with the operations and the administration of dealing with that large volume is a challenge for us. But please be assured we're trying to address that and give members the service they deserve and the service they require.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Thank you, Chair. I seem to ask this question at just about every one of these reviews. It's about our performance development reviews with staff, and rather than getting better, we seem to be getting worse. And I've got grave concerns about is it linked partly to the thing about the absence? And at the moment, we've probably got quite a number of staff, given the recent budget settlement, that are concerned about what is going to be happening in the future. And I think to have 61% only getting a performance development review is really not helping their security and well-being. And I would like to think that at some point we're going to see a better set of figures rather than continually worse.
Can I come back on that with a suggestion that I was going to be later on? Obviously, you're absolutely right. People need to know where they are and what they've done. You know, where they actually affect any of the objectives of whatever the council is actually doing. So I would like to come back on that, Malcolm, if I could, in an action later on. Okay.
Thanks for that, Archie. I'm pleased to hear it, because it's something that, like I say, has been brought up time and time again.
Okay.
Councillor Johnson, I accept your concern. It concerns myself and my management team. We do have a large number of manual staff, bus drivers, etc., but we have to get this right. Staff deserve to have their PDR, to understand. We need to understand what training they need, and PDRs are very important for that. And we are undertaking again a plan to address this, and the Chair will elaborate on that shortly. Thank you.
Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Page 198. The percentage of stage 2 complaint responses issued within statutory timescales. I note a slight improvement in the figures there, but what the graph does not tell us is actually the total number of complaints.
I'll seek that out, and I'll send that to members. So I will. And I think part of the thing on this indicator is the way that complaints work. There is a complaints process, and this indicator is where if you receive a complaint, you deal with it end to end within 20 days. We are allowed, if it's a complex one, or we need a bit more investigation or whatever it may be, to extend that. As soon as we extend that, it detracts from this figure, despite the fact that we've agreed with the complainant an extension, and if we answer it on time, it still actually detracts from this. So it's a bit, it's maybe not as clear as what it could be, and I'm going to try and, if we have to come again with this, try and put a bit more explanation into the numbers we have done within the 20 days, the numbers that we've done actually within agreed timescales as well, that would hopefully give members a bit more of an indication as to how we are completely performing. But I think the thing is, almost we're making sure also so that we do get these right, that we do investigate them thoroughly. So if it does take a little bit more time, if the complainant gets the correct answer and we're not getting any recommendations from the Ombudsman, I think that in some ways a measure of success as well.
Okay, members, we'll go to the recommendations. Members are asked to review the 6-month summary of performance for Economy Environment Appendix 1, 2.2 scrutinise the performance indicator exception report in Appendix 2, 2.3 scrutinise the projection exemption reporting in Appendix 3. Now, I'm not sure if it should be a recommendation or an action for the Director, but what I wanted to ensure, members, is obviously this was the first 6-month assessment to September last year. There may have already been some improvements in that particular area. However, what I would like to see is those improvement actions in a report sent to members bi-monthly between now and the full year's assessment, to make sure that some of the things like the PDRs are improving percentage-wise, the responses are improving, and all the other things that are in there. In the 14, the 14 red marks there is emailed to members of the EEI committee to say this is where we were, this is where we are actually going, and this is how we're actually measuring that particular thing. So it gives us a better understanding of where we actually are within that. So over the next 6 months, you'll get three reports back from the Director on each of those particular exemption reports, improvement actions, and hopefully we can see an improvement going forward. Would that be okay for members to have that as an action on the Director rather as a recommendation? Are we happy with that? Excellent, thank you very much. Yeah. No, it's just be an action. Okay, members, we'll go on to item number 8, which is the Flood Risk Management Update Report by the Head Infrastructure and Transportation. This report provides members with an update on the main schemes currently being undertaken with regard to flood risk management. The report also seeks members' approval of land acquisition for the installation of the new Sparland Bridge in Newton Stewart, which is programmed for installation in the summer of 2019. In addition, the report provides information on the proposed new council sandbag policy for members to agree that seeks to match the provision of sandbags during severe weather with available council resources. The Head of Infrastructure and Transportation will take any questions, unless you've got anything to add. Director?
Nothing to add at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Steve, anything to add?
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Stephen?
So just before we get into the meat of the actual debate, it's actually a question about one of the recommendations at 2.4 we've been asked to agree the purchase of additional land, but the appendix that it refers to is actually on page 84, where the Strategic Asset Board were asked to agree the acquisition through purchase back in November 2018. So I'm a wee bit, I would like that clarified in terms of governance or whatever. Was that decision taken then, and we've been asked to note that, or was the decision of the Asset Board to recommend to this committee to agree it, or are we agreeing it twice just for good measure?
Steve?
Effectively, we're agreeing it twice for good measure. So the first process is an officer, it's a kind of due diligence process. It's not a council-led group. The Strategic Asset Board is tasked with looking at the council's performance on its capital programmes and its property and its land assets. So there is a procedure within the Strategic Asset Board where they will do the first pass on land acquisition, as they will do with disposal of property, and then it will go to the Service Committee for the Service Committee to actually make the decision on the acquisition, in this case, knowing that it has been reviewed by a wider group of officers within the council with a property land asset management background.
Stephen? Can I just suggest for clarity then that we either the Strategic Asset Board recommends that's agreed, and then that could be determined, and then we agree that, or that we note that you've agreed to do it, because I think there's a wee bit confusing there, because I don't know if you've actually bought it and we're just kind of rubber stamping it, or you've agreed to recommend that we do, and now we've got the opportunity to do that.
Steve?
So this is an officer recommendation from the Head of Infrastructure Transportation through this report, that the recommendation is that members agree the acquisition of this land. What we're saying in the report, and we can make it clearer in future reports, is that it has been through an internal due diligence process, and the Strategic Asset Board are happy to agree that acquisition as a stage, as one of the stages in the process of buying land, and they understand that I will now bring a report to committee following internal procedures for land acquisition agreed with the Policy and Resources Committee, I would think.
Okay, so you've got some questions as well? Right, Katie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's on the same point, really. I'm looking at the recommendations in the appendix on here from the Strategic Asset Board, and one of my questions has been answered, as in who sits on that, but it's been confirmed that that's officers. I'm just looking at the recommendations here because it actually says to agree the acquisition through the purchase of land required for the construction of the bridge, but then it also says to agree the acquisition at no cost except legal fees, whereas on the previous page on the progress update, it says that the landowner has asked the council to purchase the full extent. So I'm just confused. Are we purchasing the land or are we acquisitioning the land for no cost? Can we have a clarity on the figures for that? Because it appears to say both. And if we are purchasing it, how much are we actually paying for that land?
The report which went to the Strategic Assets Board, the distinction between the no cost and the cost is that we need to acquire parcels of land on both sides of the river. So the larger area of land on the east side of the river, that is the area of land which we are agreeing the purchase today. And the smaller parcel of land on the other side of the bridge, that's been acquired at no cost. It's been gifted to us by the owner.
Okay.
And has there been a cost agreed on how much you're looking to actually purchase that land for?
The larger piece of land, the purchase, the price is in the committee report. It's £37,500.
Ian?
Good report, Chairman. I'll not pick too much, but just it's the sandbag policy, the very last recommendation. What is driving that? I think personally, I feel it's maybe a wee bit restrictive. Is it about cost? Is it about emergency? Without being overly critical of it, a number of occasions, so for Annan, we used to get delivered to palleted down to Port Street. So if you needed them in Annan, it's the main population centre of Arndale and Eskdale, as you're aware, Chair, for sure. You'd have to drive then up to, I think, up to Lockerbie is what they're saying, at our hill to get sandbags. It's only in particular for emergency. Times of emergency, I felt that there was a void being created. It wasn't needing to be created. I know people, residents in Brighcott, have driven to Annan to get sandbags because they're getting flooded out at the time, but only in times of emergency. I just felt this has been overly restrictive.
Steve?
I think, the whole revision to the sandbag policy, it's been running for a number of years now. It kind of came out in terms of the council, the last revision to it was when we had the extreme flooding. Two winters in a row, and it was really just to give clarity to people about when expectations and when they could expect to receive sandbags and when we would respond to that. If there's property damage and we think that sandbags will make a difference, that's something the council will resource up and do. But there are limits that we can throw to those resources, and I think the whole policy is about managing expectations in terms of providing sandbags. In relation to the expectations that are put on property owners to protect their property with what could arguably be or what is realistically more effective levels of protection with flood guards and vent guards, and accessing the council's current scheme on the kind of sharing of costs on those, or the kind of the flood subsidy scheme that we provide with some funding and with our bulk purchasing powers. So there are better ways to protect your property. Having said that, what we're saying is that there are sandbags available. In the past, the concern was of officers that we would maybe provide pallets of sandbags. They would deteriorate over the winter, and all we had done was created some more waste for us to landfill at cost to the council. So it's really about managing what we can deliver from these depots, an indication of what stock should be there, an indication of when the public under extreme conditions should come or could come and get sandbags. Having said that, we're also kind of pointing people to the idea that they're more proactive in terms of preparing for flooding conditions, and that they actually look at protecting their property with more realistic and more effective products.
I suppose then the question is, how much was it costing the council? What has been the pressure on the council? The driver factor is obviously almost like a cultural change. Is it something that the council needs to be doing in the first place? Maybe, but I think it's been there, it's always been reactive through what I can understand. I wouldn't have thought it'd been an incredible amount of resource or financial pressure on the council, other than usually if it's that extreme we can have some kind of reclaim for the Scottish Government 5 or 6 times out of 10 anyways with the adverse weather. I just don't see what the, other than the potential cultural change, people being proactive, we should always promote that anyways, but I think times of emergency when people need these sandbags, so you've got folk for, you could say, Harbour or Robinburn, driving to Lockerbie to get a sandbag, where you've got folk kind of, folk, that's what this is driving, so I would say that's unacceptable. If there's an option to drop at a time of emergency a kind of pallet fare of sandbags off in Langham or in Gretna or in Moffat or in wherever it may be, rather than everybody have to drive to what seems a centralised part in Andale and Estelle, and that would be, I would say, the same for White. Looking at this across the whole region, so I suppose, explicitly, Chairman, for an absolute question, what's the difference in costing and what are we saving in real terms, cost-wise, with implementing this compared to what we've had previously?
Stephen?
So I don't have the detail on exactly what we're saving, and these are all kind of incremental savings and probably trying to avoid waste. You know, if we have a pallet of sandbags, if it weighs a ton, then it'll cost £80 plus, sorry, about £90 for landfill tax plus whatever the gate fee is if we have to landfill when it's deteriorated and it's beyond use. We do point out in the sandbag policy that there are other places where sandbags can be obtained, as well as more effective means of protecting properties. And it's we do say in the policy that under urgent extreme conditions we will provide sandbags. What we're suggesting here in terms of the policy is that proactively or in advance of any winter, not providing a supply of sandbags at a local location, but actually supplying them when the urgent need arises, if it arises, and nobody else has taken the trouble to protect their properties.
My understanding is obviously when there is a risk of flooding as well, it will be up to the flood management team in SEPA to provide the pods as well as to what the actual outcome of that is actually going to be, and within the pods are sandbags as well, is that correct?
Within the pods there are no sandbags. I'm getting an agreement there. We do have flood sacks that we can provide which we think are more effective, and flood guards, and we'll probably have some vent guards as well. We have the pod, the large pod, and we also have the kind of trailer pod as well. We have the two resources that we have deployed in the past in response, as well as the option to bring sandbags at short notice.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Getting back to the Sparling Bridge, the larger parcel of land east of the river, am I correct in assuming that part of that area will be reshaped to increase the storage capacity of the floodplain?
Yes, that's correct. The larger parcel of land which we're now acquiring, firstly, that'll be used for the siding of the abutments and the ramp for the bridge. When we do the main flood scheme, there are some high spots in that land which we may need to reprofile to assist with the flow of the river, and then there'll be a remainder portion of land which we'll look to sort of either sell on or let for grazing in future, because that won't be part of the scheme, but it's been part of the overall package we've had negotiated.
So it provides much more than simply an abutment area for the bridge?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Graham?
Thank you, Chair. Again, it's on the Sparling Bridge. It's on the aesthetics of the Sparling Bridge. I mean, one thing I'll never be famed for is my aesthetic approach to life. But in the old Sparling Bridge, there were motifs of the Sparling fish on the side of the bridge. And will these be replaced on the new bridge when it is built? The locals would like it. And the second point is get the damn thing built.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think those specific points are being replaced on the new bridge. What we're looking to do is, I think we retain the old portrait panels from the old bridge which formed the entrance. We're looking at how we can integrate them into the scheme, perhaps not attached to the bridge itself, and maybe that they form something close by, or we put them back to show where the old Sparling Bridge location was. But we are working with Sustrands on artwork and sort of descriptive panels as well to put them on at a later stage once we get the bridge back in.
I think the locals would appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. No other members, so we go to the recommendations members. We're asked to note 2.1, note 2.2, note 2.3, agree 2.4. Are you happy with the explanation?
Yeah, I think I still need that kind of clarity. I'll maybe pick it up with the officer later, but the Strategic Asset Board should either be it's either delegated to them or they're recommending to us to agree it. So it's really, but happy to agree if it's to allow the project to go ahead.
Yeah, I think we've put in place a process which completes due diligence on the council acquiring more land, and that's been to policy and resources through the asset board. So all we're doing is following procedure, and it's quite right that this service committee agrees to us purchasing the land.
Okay, so happy to agree 2.4, note 2.5, note 2.6, note 2.7, note 2.8, note 2.9, note 2.10, note 2.11, and agree 2.12. Ian?
Just on 2.12, I'm a bit uncomfortable with it, Chair. I'm not saying we couldn't do it at some point in time, but I'm looking at 3.32, come back to some of the answers. Well, first of all, I think sand is reusable as well. It's no automated, it's no contaminated thing. It was sitting in a pallet. I know there's the loose pieces of bag and such like usually deteriorates, but sand's certainly a reusable product. Doesn't need to be landfilled. That's one thing. But 3.32 kind of summarises the real reason, is what I can see, is a decision made in 2009 about individual responsibility. But it's about the council's ability to manage potential demand, individual responsibility to protect one's property or the continued development of the property level protection equipment, which is far more effective. So we are going back to what Stephen's saying, looking to, but I don't see the real potential cost benefits, or even better for the public's perception. What benefits have we got again by agreeing that the script that's on the page afterwards as a new policy compared to what we've got in the moment? I didn't see the evidence within the paper contained that says actually this has been such a demand on occasion X, Y or Z, we just couldn't cope and it's cost X amount of money. That's where I come back, ask what is the real driver behind it. And sand's certainly a reusable product. You can use it for years and years to come. It sits in the grounds for thousands, millions of years, so it is reusable.
You answer that, Director?
Yeah, I think it's quite correct that we revise the policy because of climate change and because of the fact that the occurring floods or heavy rain, it's getting more and more, and staff are under great pressure when these occur because the demand for sandbags from everybody wants to protect their property. It can be quite intense, and we need to have a clear direction so staff understand when they say no and when they say yes. And I think that's important for members too, because members will be approached by their constituents in such situations. And I think it's quite correct that we have a clear direction for staff and for members in what we provide. And all we're trying to do is update that, because I think the policy goes back a number of years. And it's just to help the whole operation. Resources, again, they come into it. Our resources are contracting. And we just cannot be everything to everybody in these situations.
Yeah. Chairman, can I move that we defer the implementation of 2.12 till we get further information, look at that again, revisit at a different point? I don't see with immediate necessity. The argument I don't think has been put to us today that actually it needs to happen right now. Don't see it. We never know when there's got to be some kind of emergency flood in front of us. It would cover whether it covers part of the region or the whole region. But I don't see the argument's not being put to me in regards to reducing the level of resource we've implemented as a policy in 2009. I just don't see what the argument is at this moment in time. I'd like to see the information, so we're making an informed decision, but I just don't see it. So I would move, Chair. Hopefully that we'll get that deferred until a later date.
I mean, the director's already said we've been through a review of this over a number of years, and we're looking at how do we move this forward so members are aware of what their roles are as well. If you look at the sandbag policy on page 80, the review has actually stated that there's a sort of an average number of sandbags and that are asked for. That's included in the quantity and things like that. It's about bringing it up to date. Sandbags are not as effective as what the flood prevention opportunities are in modern equipment. It's not our responsibility as a council to protect individual houses and homeowners and things like that. We will do our best to support them, absolutely, We need that review. We need that policy in place. So we're getting to the stage of this time of year where you're going to see, you know, the weather pattern change and that potential for that. So if you're putting that as a deferral, I'm going to put an amendment forward to say we agree 2.12, and I'm happy to move that if I can get a seconder. Andrew, second. You want a deferral?
I would much prefer that, Chair. I'm just thinking of particular circumstances that even happened in my own local area where there was a whole group of us had to turn up at a house that was being flooded out near a river, fair enough, and it happens on occasions, but we had no other way. It was late on a Saturday night, between 10 and midnight, and we couldn't get sandbags for anyone. The council came in and assisted us in that particular time. We were able to get that and defend that house. We had water pumps and all sorts. Fire services were being obtained elsewhere. I do think there's got to be other individual cases across Dumfries and Galloway that will come across the same situation. I don't understand why. For me, the argument hasn't been put forward in regards to we've got to save X amount of money or we haven't got the resource. This is what we've used previously. This is what we need to use. We still need. That information is not in front of us, Chairman, by any means. So I would certainly move that we do defer for further information.
David, do you want to come in?
Yeah, Chair, we discussed this recently at local resilience level, and I would agree. I don't think we need proactive deployment of sandbags. I think if there's a likelihood there's going to be a major event, then the council would put them out anyway, and local resilience teams would go out and help with that. So I think to have them sitting about for the winter, you know, in case there's going to be a major issue, I think it's a waste of money.
Katie?
Thank you, Chair, for letting me come in on this one. I mean, I'm looking at the sandbag policy, and I'm aware that certainly in my ward, Barnkirk would be the area, and I'm also aware of the fact that I live in Creetown, and in Creetown we have had pallets dropped off for that. But I am actually looking at the policy, and I'm pleased to see that on here that the council will issue or deliver on the following order or priority. So if there is an emergency situation, and that is written into the policy, so I believe that that actually covers the situation that my fellow councillors are referring to on that. So I'm happy to propose that we go with the recommendations on this one.
Ian, do you want to come back?
I think the point is that unless I've misread this statement, the policy that's here, my understanding is that as it stands, we currently, so say it was, for instance, Carnaby area was being affected by flooding, then there could be a pallet of sandbags taken to that area with local people. And it could be, I'm saying that because of the distance from Hart Hill, it could be the top side of Moffat. I'm just trying to use it as an example and using a local area to ourselves where we can understand. As it stands, this policy would remove that. We'd have to drive to Hart Hill, so you're losing an hour and a half driving in adverse weather conditions. Affecting. I just think it's only at times of emergency. I don't think this will be much of a cost at all. And it's not about having sandbags sitting about for months at a time where they'll just sit and degrade and start to decompose. That's not what I'm talking about. I just think that it's over the top.
I think just coming back to what Katie said, I mean, we will be helping communities, there's absolutely no doubt about that, but the issue is making sure that we have that resource available at the actual time that they're requiring it. This is about a sandbag policy. I mean, it's how many sandbags is enough sandbags? You know, I don't get you. I don't get your argument, Ian. All right, that's my personal opinion. I think agreeing the sandbag policy is everybody be clear what it is. It's about us making sure in emergencies that the actual resources there helping them. But sandbags, you know.
The house, for instance, the example I gave earlier was an 87-year-old lady who was in that house, and that helped. The local community got in, got pumps, got thing moving. It wasn't for the sandbag stopping the river coming into it. It would have been that's the situation it got to. So I'm just saying it to me, unless like I said, I've misread the policy, misunderstand it. But if that's been taken away, that's the fear I've got. If that level of resource, if it's there, because it took long enough for it to get there, if it's there at the time, if it can be called on, and that's still within this policy, then that's fine. That's not my reading of it, Chairman.
Malcolm.
Thank you, Chair. My major concern about the revising the policy straight away rather than deferring it. In fact, I would actually like to know when it was going to change, but it's how much that we publicise all these other things that are available for people. You know, and I know it's maybe on the website, or if that's what you're going to say, but there's not everybody's got access to that, and that's really my difficulty with it, because I think in the fullness of time, I mean, like you say, sandbags are a bit of a very old technology, so I don't think going forward it's necessarily the answer.
and you can't be everything to everybody and hold people by the hand to make sure that they've got things in place for their own places, you know, and that's not just homes, that's businesses as well. They need to make sure that they follow their risk assessments and all that sort of stuff. Director?
I can't say anymore.
Right, okay.
The recommendation.
The arrangement is to agree the recommendation unless there's a seconder. Okay, thank you very much. So we have a motion which is...
I have a motion put forward by Councillor Dryborough and seconded by Councillor Wood, and that's to agree 2.12 as per the recommendations in the report, and that's to agree to a revised sandbag policy as detailed in paragraph 3.33. And we have an amendment put forward by Councillor Crothers and seconded by Councillor Johnson to defer 2.12 for further information.
Everybody happy with that? Okay, got the vote.
Councillor Dryborough.
Motion.
Councillor Wood. Councillor Brodie. Councillor Crothers.
Amendment.
Councillor Fairbairn.
Amendment.
Councillor Giusti.
Amendment.
Councillor Hagman.
Motion.
Councillor Inglis. Councillor James. Councillor Johnston.
Amendment.
Councillor Lever.
Motion.
Councillor Marshall.
Motion.
Councillor Martin.
Motion.
Councillor McComb.
Motion.
Councillor Nicholl. Councillor Sloan.
Motion.
Councillor Surtees.
Motion.
Councillor Thompson.
Motion.
Councillor Young.
Motion.
And I can confirm that the motion carries with 13 votes to 5. And therefore, members will agree 2.12, which is to agree to revise sandbag policy as detailed in paragraph 3.33.
Okay, thank you, members. We'll now move on to item number 9, which is Annan Harbour ownership and responsibilities. The report presents various options for the future of governance of Annan Harbour that could be used to control navigation in Annan Harbour and on its approaches. The report also seeks members' approval to recommend to full council that funding support is provided to the Annan Harbour Action Group to progress a harbour revision order. In addition, the report advises of further support available to the Annan Harbour Action Group from the local solutions team being put in place by the Economic Development Service. The Head of Infrastructure and Transportation will take any questions. I do know that there was a meeting between the leader, the deputy leader and Councillor Brodie on this, and other elected members I think were updated on the actual meeting. So, Director, have you got anything to add to the...
Nothing. The only thing I would say that we did receive an email from the Harbour Trust or Improvement team, and they very much support the recommendations that are in front of you.
So that was the Annan Harbour Action Group?
Yeah, sorry, Annan Harbour Action Group.
Okay, members, any questions? Sean?
Yeah, thanks for this report, and I think it's a positive way forward. I think the Annan Harbour Action Group actually met this week, and Councillor Brodie is the chair, and they very much now support the option 4. I think the timing as well is crucial for Annan and the wider DG12 area after what's happened at Pinnays. I think, with the task force to be put in place in the next month or so, I think it's vital that any kind of projects that we can identify that can stimulate the economic environment round about the Annan area is most welcome, and there's certainly opportunities through tourism, etc., that can be developed. Very proactive group is the Annan Harbour Action Group, and they've got lots of ideas, so this will allow them to take those forward, and this stands Annan in good stead for going forward. So welcome the report, thank the officers for their time, and I would support the recommendations.
Thanks very much. It also, I think, fits in well with our policy of being an enabling council and moving that forward that way. Members, any further questions? Ian and then John.
Thanks. Good to hear the comments regards if the Annan Harbour Action Group are in agreement with this. See, in regards to, we're looking at asking policy resources, will they support this? The Corporate Council support this to another £30,000. I know it outlines what it's here, but can we just have a fuller understanding? What does that mean, the timelines against that? How long will that take, do we think, in regards to bringing that Harbour revision order? I think it's what it's talking through the local community into order. And I think we in September 17, I think we actually agreed at that point to invest some money in some ladders. Just an update in regards to how that spend's going on, what's actually happening there as well.
Stephen?
So in terms of the recommendation, we're asking, there's a recommendation to full council that 30,000 is made available from policy development funding, and that be identified within the budget setting processes that have been taken forward for setting the full budget. In terms of the Harbour revision order and the timeline for that will be very much down to how quickly the group want to move that forward. If this is the option that's taken forward, what we're proposing here in terms of a solution facilitated by the council is that we make the funding available, and that's primarily a large chunk for kind of legal fees to draft the order. What we can certainly do through Ian Cooper's experience on the other orders in the council is provide all the work that we've done in the past and help them review the order as it's developed. We've done quite a bit of work in the past in working with Transport Scotland and working out what an acceptable order is to Transport Scotland. And we're also looking at picking up in here through Jan's team, through the economic development support, is some support on working on a business plan just to make a case to Transport Scotland to get them behind the order and on side with it, that there is an income generation, that there is some future plan for funding the harbour going forward. I'll maybe just pass to Ian on the ladder situation, just give a bit of an update on that in terms of the works we'd identified as asset owner that we need to undertake some works to the existing infrastructure.
Yeah, there was some delays with progressing the ladders due to some confusion about where the ladders are going to be placed. That's all been sorted now, so we know where the ladders are going to be going. It's just a resource issue of getting the staff time to actually progress this, that's all. But we know where they're going to be, and it's just a case of progressing that and getting a permission from the planning department, because it's obviously a listed structure there as well.
You add something on, Jan?
Yeah, I just want to come in through to the process. So I had a really great meeting with the Annan Harbour Action Group just before Christmas, and I can see that they have quite a vision for the area. What I am aiming to do is to enable them to build their capacity, but also to enable them to create a business plan that creates the quantum of investment that is needed, which will be part of the Annan Action Plan. And it's made very clear that we need to have this, but our role will be to be able to enable and facilitate and use other people's tools, like the South of Scotland Economic Partnership and other actors also who help in supporting the third sector, such as third sector DG. But it will be the Annan team that will be in place by the next month to be able to enable and support them through the process.
Thank you, John Young, and then Katie.
Thank you, Chair. I note on page 103, these are estimated costs, including legal costs of £25,000. I mean, I do believe this is very positive and I'm fully supportive of it. But in recommendation 2.6, it says, agree to recommend that 30,000 from policy development be given. Should it not be up to 30,000, or are we handing over a 30,000 block to enable this to happen?
I think what we've seen in other harbours, that there was up to 30,000 available for legal fees and things like that, and I've not got a problem whether it's up to 30,000 or 30,000. If you want the wording changed on that, that is not an issue. Yeah, unless you've got something, Steve.
How we tend to do this, and we've done it before in one of the other harbours that we supported, was we set up a reserve account and we actually hold the funds in a service reserve, and on the demonstration of invoices and costs, we will pay back out of that fund.
Katie?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, again, with my Harbours Chair subcommittee hat on, I would just like to say that, yes, I'm really pleased to see this recommendation coming forward of option 4. The team that we've got in the Harbours is actually really experienced, and to be able to share that knowledge with the communities, I think, is crucial. So I would just like to say that I welcome the option 4 going forward as recommendation, and I'm also really pleased to hear that the local members and the local community have actively been engaged, and that we're fulfilling our commitment that we made last year at full council. So I'm really pleased that we've been able to do that within the timescale that we set out last year. So thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, members. We'll go to the recommendations in. We're asked to note 2.1, note 2.2, agree option 4, 2.3, 2.4 agree that should recommendation 2.3 be agreed, officers assist. 2.5 agree, again, and recommendation 2.3 being agreed, officers assist the Annan Harbour Action preparing a business plan. And 2.6 agree to recommend to full council that 30k from policy development will be identified within the current budget setting process. Are we happy with that? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, members, we'll go on to item number 10, which is the Economic Development Capital Grant Programme External Funding Progress Update, report by the Head of Economic Development. This report provides a progress update on economic development. Capital projects have been the subject of external funding applications during 2018-19. The report seeks member support to apply for funds from South of Scotland Economic Partnership Regeneration Capital Grant Fund and adjustments to the Economic Development Capital to accommodate the Kellohome STEM Skills and Innovation Centre described in paragraph 3.6 of 500k as match funding. The details of a range of the external funding proposals are summarised in the appendices 1 and 2, and this activity shows members how its capital programme investment can lever in funding, not only for its own economic capital programme, but provide an opportunity to lever and support complementary businesses and community initiatives such as the Kellohome STEM Skill Innovation Centre initiative. The Oven, the Veterans Garden, Rosefield Mills, by working across services and with businesses and their communities. This is place-based economic development in action. In the event that the external funding proposals described are successful, officials will bring back a report in March 2019. The Head of Economic Development will take any questions on the report unless you've got anything to add to it, Director.
Nothing to add at this stage, Chair. Thank you.
Jan?
I have nothing to add at this stage.
Members? Okay, members, so we're asked to note.
Thanks, Chair. Page 115. I assume there is a typo there where it states Whithorn Trust becomes more sustainable. It will be all roads lead to Whithorn. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the Whithorn Pilgrims route, somewhere there's a figure of 20,000 visitors in 5 years. After 5 years, that would be the annual figure?
Jan?
It's the ambition of the route and those other businesses and organisations on the route that it would be larger than 20,000, but the target is 20,000.
No, that's fine, thank you. But I would like to mention the Queensbury Enterprise Centre, which I think is the TSB renovation. And my first question would be, are we match funding that? Are we an investor in this?
Jan?
There are two projects that are in Queensbury Square. One project is for the Oven. The other one is the council's own building, which is Queensbury House. So it isn't the commercial Queensbury Square. The council and the planned way of releasing the economic development funds, if we were successful, would be focused on only that building. So we're not investing in Rosefield Mills, the Oven, or the Veterans Garden. essentially we're investing and using our investment as a lever for the overall project. Other projects have levered their own funds.
We are investing in the Queensbury Enterprise Centre, which I thought was a TSB. It's not, is it? No, it's a different building.
No, it's the council's own building, which has been housing the homeless service.
Right, and we're talking the business case. There's demand for this. Would that be third sector demand, because they would tend to pay lower rents and have be shorter duration lease contracts?
No, actually, it's public sector and it's also private sector. In the town, and it has been noticed that there is a lack of A-grade office space. And whilst there has been A-grade office space, there is also a demand. The best A-grade office space we have in Dumfries town itself is in the Crichton and in the outlining areas. If we want to regenerate and create more footfall into the town centre, then we need more businesses. And this gives an opportunity to offer to small businesses who would like to locate in the town centre a type of service that they would not otherwise get. And it is a struggle for some of these businesses that are either they are growth businesses to get A-grade office space. So that's an opportunity for that, and it's also an opportunity to share resources and to create more businesses in the town centre.
Thank you. Because asking around, there seem to be the commercial companies are moving out of the town centre, but there might be a demand for third sector companies to be in the town, but people would like lower floor offices with frontage because of access and profile, etc. But to do that, we'd probably have to relax planning somewhat to go in that direction. And I had also heard about a commercial company who has been thinking of a similar project to ours. And are we therefore concerned about displacement?
We would welcome into the town centre more businesses to come in, and if those premises were good for the third sector or others who would be prepared to pay the A-grade office space rate that there usually is per square metre, we'd welcome that, because the town centre does need diversification, and this is part of diversification and additional to what we already have in the town centre.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking for some clarity really on the recommendations. So in recommendation 2.1, we're being asked to support the application and which requests 500,000 match funding for the Kellerholm STEM Skills and Innovation Centre project. And in 2.3, we then go on to note that in the event that the external funding application are successful, we would require an allocation for match funding for the Kellerholm STEM Centre and also the Queensbury Enterprise Centre. We're then in 2.4 agreeing to receive a further report with the finalised proposals for the match funding. But I'm just wondering, is there a figure for the Queensbury Enterprise Centre? Because the 500,000 that has been mentioned is linked to the Kellerholm STEM, and there doesn't seem to be any indication for a cost for the Queensbury Enterprise Centre match funding. So I'm just wondering if that information is available at all.
Yes, can I answer that, Chair? Yes, we do have that figure. That is £569,000. At the time of writing, the person who had that information was not in the office. I thought it was 600,000. I didn't put the number in, but it is definitely 569,000.
So is that on top of the 500,000 for? So it would be 1,600,000.
It's within the programme, and if you recall, there was 1.5 million allocated for Dumfries Town Centre. Essentially, that is part of the offer.
Jeff?
When will we know the outcome of the stage 2 applications?
They're aiming for response back in February, but if I recall last year, it came in later February, early March. So we're expecting February, but knowing Scottish Government, it will more than likely spread out to the beginning of March. I hope it's February so I can get the paper out very quickly for you.
Sean?
Just to welcome this report, but looking at the the exciting prospect of the Whithorn Pilgrim Route project, I'm just wondering in the future. I know that there has been talk of the council looking at the development of the Solway coastal path, which is part of the network that will link in the walking and cycling England to Scotland. So I know that's something that hopefully we would see some sort of movement on, or some sort of work done on that, and maybe a similar scheme being developed in the future.
We were very fortunate to have the All Roads lead to Whithorn Trust coming to us with this worked out, and coming to us not just with their area but the whole pathway, which was very welcomed. And we too would like to welcome something else from a group, even if a group needed the support to see such a thing come forth. So we'll be looking forward to be able to enable and facilitate such a scheme as well.
Okay, happy with that? Okay, we will go to the recommendations. We are asked to note 2.1, agree 2.2, note 2.3. Can you fix your mic?
A town centre policy for Dumfries is deficient in many ways, and I can't support this Queensbury Enterprise Centre project.
We are noting the recommendation. There isn't any agreement in this, we're just noting it. So are you suggesting we move that out? Remember, this is a multi-project scheme application, and it's at application stage. There is a further report coming back in March about it, so you will get the further information then. So are you happy with that?
In as much as I've seen it, thank you.
So we've noted 2.3, we've agreed 2.4. Yep. Okay. Remember, there is lunch here unless you want to go on and finish the things. It'll take, I don't know how long it'll take, but shall we carry on until we finish and get this through? Okay. We will go on to item number 11 then, which is the report provides members Regional Strategic Woodland Creation Partnership. This report provides members with an update on the development of a Regional Strategic Woodland Creation Project for the south of Scotland, and work undertaken today as requested at the 23rd of November 2018 meeting of this committee. The report provides details of the activity undertaken as part of the Regional Strategic Woodland Creation Project. The preferred area is southwest of Sankar, and it is proposed that land use master plan is developed through engagement with landowners, communities and a range of key stakeholders. It is important that it is remembered that this is a pilot project, and as such there is the opportunity to consider the development of enabling infrastructure, biodiversity and other activities that enhance the value of this very special place. Such activity is building on Upper Nithsdale's ambition to diversify its economy in a meaningful and sustainable way. Upper Nithsdale is an economic priority area for the current council plan. Members are asked to agree to the area for further consideration and receive a report in November 2019. The Head of Economic Development will take any questions. Unless, Director, you've got anything to add?
Nothing to add at this stage, thank you, Chair.
Members, unless Simon, have you got anything to add?
Nothing to add at this moment, Chair.
Stephen?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a quick question. It was more just an assurance. Obviously, it's in the early stages of where this will end up, but it was more to get an assurance at this point in the journey that that we'll avoid, where possible, displacing the likes of existing hill farmers, for example, or if there's designated landscape areas such as peat bogs or whatever it might be, or protected sort of landscapes, that we ensure that they're not sort of affected detrimentally by this going forward.
Simon?
Aye, thank you, Chair. Yes, we'll give that reassurance. This is the early stages. This is identifying a area for further consideration, and obviously the idea is not to displace land managers or to plant trees in places which would be detrimental to the biodiversity or other opportunities for carbon sequestration. So this is very much the early stages to try and address all of those.
I take it as a Forestry Scotland community we're just supporting in that respect.
Yes, this is a partnership project between ourselves and Forestry Commission.
Thank you, Chair. Is there not a wind farm has got a planning permission in this area, or does this area not cover that?
Steve?
Chair, yeah, we're certainly been in the process of mapping all of the existing infrastructure, and that would include things like consented wind farms. Wouldn't necessarily be mutually exclusive in terms of, for example, providing opportunities for shared use of access, roads and tracks and so on.
Katie?
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned in your opening statement there about key stakeholders, but I've gone through the papers here and I can't seem to find a list of those key stakeholders. Will that be available? Just because I am conscious of the points raised by my colleague here in regards to the peat bogs and ensuring that those are protected. We also have hilltop farmers, etc., but we also have likes of the Golden Eagle project to ensure that their views are taken into account. So it was just, will we be given a list of those key stakeholders? And also, I just wanted to say that I welcome on page 132 or page 2 of the actual document that we'll be looking at enhancing native woodland networks and protecting the existing habitats, because I think it's very important that we look at our native woodland and we're not just looking at monocrop of forestry. So that's very welcomed in this paper.
Simon, the stakeholders.
All right, thank you, Chair. Yes, happy to provide a more detailed list of stakeholders as we move further forward.
And can I ask, will members be able to add to that list of stakeholders if required?
Certainly, Chair. Any additional input is always appreciated.
Thank you. David?
Thank you, Chair. Following on from Councillor Hagman, it is a chance for nature, especially if one concentrates on the parts where we can add the most value. And in project work that I did abroad 2 or 3 times, we had the edge of the forest where we graded the vegetation, sometimes had a shark's teeth type frontage to it, and the first 25 metres of the pasture field beside it was in a meadow and an extremely high value configuration. I mean, just a couple of questions. Is that hard to achieve in the pastoral setting, and therefore could, in this case, that margin be moved back into the forest? And how about the roughening of the edge of the forest to give more diversity, particularly in south-facing aspects? Thank you.
Simon?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, obviously, any woodland fringe areas do have sort of intrinsic value for biodiversity and nature conservation. We would look at obviously trying to work through the master planning process to ensure that we could address concerns to maximise the biodiversity, the recreation, flood attenuation, as well as sort of commercial planting and native species. So I think all of these things gives us the opportunity to look at how we can input that into the master planning process.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me come back in on this. I'm again looking at our aims for this forestry woodland expansion, and the third point down on page 132 makes mention of recreational areas for local communities and visitors to the region. Now, considering the success of Tweed Valley and mountain biking, and the fact that we have the 7 Stains within Dumfries and Galloway, how can we ensure that we actually explore these further opportunities? Because the recreational cycling of mountain biking can bring huge economic benefits to our region. So are we able to actually focus in on those aspects of this project as well, please?
Simon?
Aye, thank you, Chair. It's something we can put into the scope, obviously, with Forestry Commission to ensure that we don't miss any opportunities on this. The opportunities, obviously, for woodland creation provides a significant opportunity for recreation in between any sort of commercial crops or rotation. So we need to make sure that we get this right for all of the communities.
I think, Chair, just to add to that as well, what this paper sets out is the process of engagement would also involve local communities and local businesses. So if there are opportunities of that nature, then the master planning process should help to get them on the table.
John?
And I just want to add in that Economic Development Service, as well as including Environment, has been working very closely with the communities in Upper Nithsdale, especially with the public realm and a whole lot of other things. And there are ambitions in there for tourism and in particular for sustainable tourism. So this type of approach and working together and ensuring that we are engaging consistently with our community up there will ensure that we are diversifying the economy. Because one of the clear messages we get from Upper Nithsdale, they do not want to be held a hostage to fortune to one major employer as they had been in the past. And I think this gives us an opportunity to honour this and make sure that they're a part of that decision making.
John.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if extraction routes for the harvest of timber will be considered before the planting commences. I'm aware the bridges over the River Nith are particularly narrow from this area onto the A76.
Simon?
Aye, thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, the opportunity to create and look at this pilot area in more detail gives the opportunity to forward plan, to look at, obviously, routes for timber extraction, taking into account, obviously, the experience we've had through timber transport routes to date. So it will be part of that matrix that we consider as we move forward.
So that's a yes. Stephen?
Again, thanks for letting me back in, but it was just on the bullet points on page 133, and obviously tying into some of their other priorities about helping retain working age population, people in the region, etc., and providing support to rural communities. I mean, how can are there ways that we can leverage opportunities to help embed communities more closely with the land, for example? So if we're working with communities to develop sustainable new economic opportunities, are Forestry Scotland sort of open to, well, we could have community woodlots, and that there's no stronger bond sometimes for people to be linked to the land in the sense they have a direct stake in it, rather than just being a tertiary sort of a business associated with tourism, for example, which is much more fickle.
I mean, I think this is very much the start of the process, and all these ideas will be going forward. But Simon, if you...
Happy to include that as part of the scope. I think the opportunity is there for us to look at this as a holistic approach, and obviously sort of take on board comments that members are making in terms of how we can scope that project.
Okay, members, go to the recommendation. We're asked to note 2.1, note 2.2, and agree 2.3. Okay, we'll now move on to item number 12, which is Dumfries and Galloway Council Environmental Policy Framework, the report by Head of Economic Development. The EEI Committee on the 12th of September 2017, it was agreed that officers should develop a Dumfries and Galloway Council Sustainable Development, Environment and Climate Change Strategy 2018-32, to align with the Scottish Government's proposed changes in climate change legislation policy with the Council's own operational and strategic activities. This report seeks members' approval of an environmental policy framework document to guide and direct the Council's corporate activities relating directly to sustainable development, environmental activities and adaptation in light of new and existing legislation. The policy framework provides the opportunity for the Council to demonstrate its environmental credentials, which are often overlooked. The framework will be vital in implementing many of the planned activities for the Council, now into the future, in its operations and its strategic initiatives, like the transformation programme and the development of low-carbon economic strategy for the region. The Head of Economic Development will take any questions on the report, unless, Director, you have anything to add?
Nothing to add, Chair, thank you.
Jan, anything to add?
Nothing to add.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I really welcome an environmental policy going forward on this, and I was delighted that the proposal I put forward to full council to support the phasing out of single-use plastics by our council was supported across the board at full council. However, there's no mention of this policy or anything to do with single-use plastics in there. And I understand that might be a specific policy, but it would be useful to have mention of that if we're taking this forward as a framework, because certainly we've agreed that policy. I've not had any, or there's not been any information come back as to how we're getting on with the reduction of our single-use plastics. And certainly when I was at Monreath House, they're still using those plastic coffee containers. There's still members in here with polystyrene cups using. So it's just one, maybe to ask for an update of that, but also to find out, can we incorporate that policy into this policy as well?
Jan?
Quite easily done. I think we can add it into how we will do it, lead by example, and we'll put that in there. So happy to add that in.
John, then.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I note on page 145, and I completely support this, but do we actually measure the council's energy use, the electricity consumption, the miles travelled on council business? Have we got ongoing statistical data to allow us to chart a reduction in the council's energy use?
Jan?
That is actually undertaken by the council's energy management team, so it is done. It is done as part of operations.
All right, thank you, Chair. Yes, we've got a statutory duty as part of our climate duties report annually to report back to the Scottish Government, so we do have that information on an annual basis.
Okay, John? Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Just on a similar theme, how does, this environmental policy framework fit in with the Council's carbon reduction policy?
Fits in very well, Jim, I can assure you on that one.
This is the enabler and facilitator for it. Our carbon duties are known, but it needs to be reminded. The policy is like the guidebook for the officer to make sure that they're living it and feel as though they're participating in it. It also demonstrates our license to operate and ensuring that we're working in our planetary limits. Why is it important? Because if we do this well, we will naturally save and reduce cost and demonstrate efficiencies. When we report on our carbon management, there is a cost to that. So it is in our best interest to be reducing it. So this is why it was done in 2 pages, because it's my experience if it's 2 pages, it's easy to remember. And I think what we've tried to do is make it memorable but doable for every council officer who works for this authority. And this will build on a larger low carbon economic strategy, which will be driven hopefully through Borderlands and through ourselves, and we will benefit as a whole.
Jim?
So it's entirely compatible with the carbon reduction plan?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Now the members go to the recommendations of members. We're asked to note 2.1, note 2.2, and agree 2.3. Thank you. We'll then go on to item number 13, which is Reshaping Stranraer Update Report by the Head of Economic Development. This report provides members with a detailed member-led community stakeholder engagement programme. Members are asked to agree the member-led engagement plan as detailed in Appendix 1 that takes a holistic view of reshaping the west of the region with Stranraer as its mini-capital. An outline programme and action plan is in Section 8 of the plan. This is aligned to the national standards for community engagement and has been developed with support of the Council's community and stakeholder engagement team. This is detailed initiative to be deliverable by October 2019. There is a question on this member-led. It's member supported by officers, I would presume, rather than just member-led. So we want to make sure that that's right in the recommendations. Tommy?
Thanks, Chair. I also welcome the refocus on the short to medium term projects. But what we need is we need to start getting things on paper, things moving forward. We can't just keep promising the people of Stranraer that we're going to do something. We have to do it. At the last meeting, I asked that they look at the possibility of the new building which is being renovated in Stranraer. They look at the possibility of placing some sort of tourist information service in there. I thought we were going to get a report back to this committee on that. It would be an ideal, it would fit in with the moving forward on tourism. And maybe John's got an answer for me on that one?
John?
What our aim was to do, we've got 2 buildings that the council has been working on in the town. One is the Harbour Masters and the other is the George Hotel. Part of that process was to find end use. We have done desktop studies as well as met with some interested parties, and there is an end use for the Harbour Masters potentially as a visitor information area. What would be needed then is a business case to make sure it stacks up. What our hope would be as officials working with members is to put this on the table as part of the member-led engagement supported by officers to really test that, because some of this desktop work has been done one-on-one, and it's been done as we would do market soundings, and now we need some real evidence, and this engagement approach gives us the opportunity to do that. And if it stacks up and there are groups that say, yes, we can do it, and here's our proposal, we can have a beauty contest on it and be able to make an informed decision.
Welcome back, Tommy.
It didn't actually tell me why I didn't have the report before us today on what I asked for. I mean, if it wasn't possible in that time scale, that's fine. I can accept that. You know, but I think if members ask for something, it should be there. I will ask Jan, the local members are meeting with interested parties on the tourism side very shortly, and I would ask if Jan would be available to attend.
Jan?
I'd be delighted to be available, and I will also go with our Growth Accelerator Programme Officer who leads on tourism.
Okay, Ros, then Graham, then Katie, then Andrew G.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got a couple of questions, but before we go into those, I would like to talk about what member-led means, and I had an idea, rather than just sort of go through it all in great detail, is whether perhaps I would be willing to head up a working party and ensure officer support, and maybe the four of us could drive the developments, because what is crucial is that something needs to start happening. I think the folks that I've been talking to, and I know other members from Ward 1 have been talking to, are ready to see something happening. And so in order to drive that forward, maybe that would be an idea to start that. The other question I have, the question I have, on page 155, it says appoint a named lead person. Who is that lead person? Michael Rosie? That's you, is it? Right, because I think it's really important that we have that sort of consistent point of contact, and I know you rang me on Friday and it was incredibly productive and positive. I also just have a quick question, Chair, and then I'll stop. Where are Stena and Network Rail in this moving forward, and are they and will they be part of this action group, this working group?
Jan?
With respect to Stena, we work closely with them. I will have to ask them, I have planned to ask them who their representative would be. As for Network Rail, they have not been engaged. They are part of the stakeholder group.
Okay, Graham?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. 2 points. One is the appointed named lead person commenced December 18, completed by November 18. That's a fair bit of work. I presume that's a misprint. That's the first point. But the second point was that Ward 2 is it represented in this member-led working group? Because Ward 2, which is our ward, my ward, and Jim and Katie and whoever else, we start at about 2 miles east of Stranraer. That is the boundary of our ward. And this, if this is to develop the whole of the west, you know, Dunraggett, Castle Kennedy, Glenluce, they all come into the equation. So I'm not looking for work, I'm not looking for a position, but I'm just pointing out that maybe there should be some representatives from Ward 2 on that committee.
We can give you work if you want. Jan?
Happy to accommodate willing members.
Okay, thank you. Katie?
Thank you, Chair. So yes, I too had a question about the named lead person, which I'm I'm not entirely comfortable with the fact that Michael's then gone, oh, well, that might be me. Either you're the named lean person or you're not. And actually, it would be really good to have that clarity for the committee and as we move forward. So anything coming forward, if it's members-led, officer-led, it includes the named person, whoever that may be. I was looking at the list of stakeholders, and actually it was looking for confirmation, really. We have on page 153 that we have low priority, medium, high stakeholders, but yet in our list of stakeholder identification, it doesn't mention whether these are low, medium or high. Now, I understand that that may not be a particularly positive way to go forward, because you don't want to tell someone that they're low priority rather than they're high, but from our point of view, it would be quite useful to know who are the key members that you need round that table to move this forward. And my other observation is the very first stakeholder identified is DGC elected members and the rationale for it being member-led engagement and governance. However, the fifth one down is local area committee MPs and MSPs, which would suggest that those on the Wigton area committee, i.e. Ward 1 and 2 members, almost have a separate remit. So it's just to confirm that that member-led engagement, is that only Ward 1? Because in my understanding, this is a strategic capital project. This should be member-led from across Dumfries and Galloway. Absolutely, we need to get the input from Ward 1 because Stranraer is in Ward 1, but surely this should be across the board and actually driven as an entire force of the council forward and not just left for those in the west to deal with it. We want to be able to get this actually completed, and it is a strategic way forward, so let's give it the precedence that it needs and not just leave it to the Ward 1 with Ward 2 member support as well. So I don't know if there's a question there, but that's certainly a various observations, and if you'd like to feedback on them, that would be useful.
I think just coming back to what's been said previously, Katie, about making sure that the area committee are informed about what's actually going on, that's absolutely right. But if there is any sort of strategic decisions to be made about Stranraer Harbour, then EEI committee is the parent body to make that decision. But certainly looking back, we need to make sure that the area committee are certainly aware, so it would be the whole area committee rather than just the Ward 1. But Jana, you?
I mean, it's exciting because we're looking at the whole West. So, that's there are other committees in the whole West. When we've looked at the Reshaping Stranraer, key projects in there have been in Kakubri, have been in Whithorn, but there are many others that are coming forth as well. So we had always assumed that DG elected members were the decision-making body. So we had always assumed, maybe we should have been more targeted on it, that this is a full council priority. But it is also important that we get the intelligence from the local members, and we also get advice and critique from the local members because they know those areas much better than we do.
Okay, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. I pretty much agree with what Tommy and Roz have both said. It's certainly taken its sweet time to get to this process. My bone of contention here is just one word that's in this report in the very front page, and that's vulnerable communities. When I look at Stranraer, I see an ambitious and aspiring community that's perhaps no more vulnerable than any other community in D&G. So I would ask that we remove that and maybe say that we're an ambitious community, because over the couple of years that I've been kind of active in the town, and I've seen that small enterprise are seeing success. You've got positive community groups, such as the Development Trust, the Community Council, Incredibly Edible, etc. I mean, we've had the Scotland's only Oyster Festival for the past 2 years. I think we're ambitious. We're not. I would like to change that terminology.
John.
First of all, could you tell me which paragraph? I will definitely remove that.
3.6.
3.7. We will definitely remove that because, if anything, it's an ambitious but a resilient community, so we will remove that.
Stephen and then Sean.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think it was, as a member who's not in Ward 1 or Ward 2, but on the EEI committee, I think it was just to build on the the outline programme and action plan, although it alludes to gathering and interpreting data, briefing members, etc., ultimately there's going to be either the area committee, the Wigtonshire Area Committee, will either be making recommendations on the information they're getting, both from their engagement and as a decision-making committee, and they would likely make recommendations to this committee, I'm sure, which we would take on board if we had to make a strategic decision. So I think it needs to be a wee bit clearer, I think, and give a timeline, because time seems to be the thing that's slipped so badly for the West over the last 10 years. Just to get that embedded in the phase 2, phase 3 of the action plan, where it's once the engagement and consultation has been taking place with all the stakeholders, etc., and that's ongoing, that we've actually got a firm timeline that we know, as elected members, we know that action is taking place in the west of the region according to our strategic priorities.
Yeah, John?
That's fine, we'll do that, especially the timeline, that's absolutely vital.
Sean?
Thanks. Just a general point, because I was hearing the debate about who the lead officer is, etc., but I think more so now than ever, probably economic development, regeneration department within the council is probably the most important area, or one of the most important areas going forward, with the development of the South of Scotland Enterprise Agency and the links and the work that will have to be done with them, the big projects with regards to borderlands, the master plan developments, and in all of the key areas, or the largest areas in Dumfries and Galloway, Dumfries, Stranraer, Annan, and all the other work they're doing up on this dale, etc. And it's fair, that's been set against a backdrop with this department has probably seen a high turnover of staff, etc. So a bit of flux, I would say, over the last year, but I think things are starting to settle down now. So what we do probably need is, identification of the resource in the next few months, what that resource is, and, so that members can satisfy ourselves that we have the correct amount of resource, but also, named officers identified, who's got to lead projects, also the work that's to be done on developing, where appropriate, economic regeneration vehicles so that communities can work in partnership with the economic development and support them, to actually deliver plans within these areas. So I think it's crucial going forward. I think it is fair to say over the last year there has been a high turnover of staff, etc. But I would look forward to maybe a report in the next 6 months at the latest, actually detailing, the route ahead and the map ahead for economic development, because of so many things happening in the region at the moment.
Okay, I think that's acceptable, as we can get a report of where economic development is, the structures within economic development and what the priorities are. You know with that, Jan?
Yes, that has been my exact thought, because essentially what I'm looking at is a multidisciplinary approach to project, not only project development, but project engagement and delivery. I know that the project delivery will come under the council's PMO, or whatever structure is required for delivery, whatever is appropriate. But going forth, we will not want to be duplicating what the new agency will be doing. If anything, we'll want to lever what the new agency is doing, and we're quite cognizant of that. What I'm aiming to do at the moment is ensure that we're working jointly across the council, but jointly out with the council as well, because there are a lot of resources that we can be using and taking advantage. I am sure, and I'm looking at my director, who will be wanting me to write such a paper, because we'll want greater certainty on what we will be delivering in light of a new agency. So I would say, just looking at my director, that would be coming in the next 6 months, because it is absolutely vital for us going onwards, because we have these key strategic projects that the council has agreed to finance.
Okay, members, so we're going to go to the recommendations, just a slight change in the recommendations. Members are asked to agree that the led by member, supported by officer, community and stakeholder engagement plan is enacted as in detail in the appendix. Ian?
I find that, I think Councillor Marshall and yourself make a valid point in regards to that further report. You're in charge of the agenda for this committee, so I wonder if you could take that either as an action or build it in the recommendations that we do actually get that back.
We'll just add another recommendation that the report will come back about the economic development structure and priorities for the next within... Make it an action. We can make it an action, yeah, to bring that in the next 6 months. Okay. Okay, members, we're going to go into item number 14, which is any other business deemed urgent by the chairman due to need for a decision. I don't have any. We then have item 15, Local Government Scotland Act, consider of resolution to exclude the public from the meeting in terms of section 50A(4) and paragraph 6, 9, 12, 13 and part 1 of the Schedule 7A of the Local Government Act 1973. Can we exclude the public? Okay, thank you. We'll then go on to the exempt